Okay, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's 8:15, and we'll take care of some preliminary business before other board members get here, committee members. So our first item of business is approval of our meeting minutes. I want to ask our board members if they have any edits to the amendments, edits to the minutes that they want to amend. Let's kind of collect those one at a time and try to handle those in one motion. And that way we don't have to do multiple motions to edit the minutes if there are any. So anybody see any? Okay. Okay. Page 8. Oh, the last page, okay.
On number 2, where it says define the location of the buffer for current and future.
Okay.
I think that should be future.
Future, okay. All right.
That's all I saw.
All right. Anybody else have any edits? Okay, I've got one that I just want to kind of bounce off of everybody. I'm just kind of a stickler for the flow of the minutes as it relates to the business that we took care of. So it's my impression that we voted on edits to the amendments to the minutes first, where it talks about approval of February 1 meeting minutes and decision letters, and the motion to approve the minutes is listed first rather than after we made amendments to the minutes. And when I look back at the video, that's the way I remember it happening. And then secondly, and I just want to get some feedback on that maybe from our council, it may not matter. But then secondly, we had a discussion about what information should be included in decision letters and minutes, and it says the motion was made and seconded by the committee that from the meeting date of March 1st, 2018 and forward, decision letters should only address the decision the committee granted, desired, denied, et cetera, and conditions associated with the meeting, with the decision. It's my recollection that we also edited out a statement that I made about metro policy from the decision letter as part of that motion. And so it wasn't just a future decision, it was also retroactive to the February 1st meeting minutes to remove the references I made about metro policy. And I think Mr. Slade may have found some other things that he wanted edited out as well. I don't remember what those were. So that's two things. And then the third thing is, I just wanted to note when Mr. Slade resumed the chair, just in the flow of the discussion. That would be the last thing under item 2 in the minutes. So what does everybody think about that? Hey, Mr. Slade. Okay. All right. Okay. So my question is, how do we remedy it?
So you want to make a motion to amend the minutes to incorporate all the changes that you just noted?
Assuming someone can find out what those changes should have been from the original recording, since
Yeah, I would imagine that you can.
So I can make that broad of a motion. Okay. All right.
Well, since you just stated it all
yes.
for the record for today's meeting.
Yes.
You can incorporate that into your motion.
Exactly. Okay. So that's my motion.
And do you want to incorporate Anna's change as well?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so we've got 4 items here. We've got edits to page 8, changing feature to future. We've got a request to reorder the items listed in section 2 as they were voted on in the order of discussion. And then we have a request to change the second paragraph on page 2 to reflect mine and Mr. Severe's motion. I think either he made it or I seconded it, or I made it, he seconded it, I don't remember, to remove statements that were unrelated to the decision letter from the February 1st decision letters, and that would also be continued forward as stated currently in the minutes. And then lastly, just to note, as the last paragraph in Section 2, that Mr. Slade resumed the chair of the meeting, just to reflect the order of business that day. So our general counsel advises me that I can leave that open to your discretion, Penny, to go back and edit all of that according to the recordings. Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the table that's been clarified. All right, we have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? This is a motion to edit the minutes, and that's all it is. And it's been properly seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
I would make it a motion to approve the minutes edited as proposed, unless you want her to bring them back next month and you want to defer it so that you can see the edited version and then you can approve them then. You have either of those two options.
Thank you. That's exactly the kind of clarity we expect from our general counsel. Excellent. Okay, so motion to amend the minutes has been approved and seconded and passed. Now we have the opportunity for someone to make a motion to accept the minutes as amended before next meetings.
Or you can defer the approval of the minutes as amended until the next meeting, and so that you will have a chance to read them in class.
Okay, so what's the opinion of the board?
Approved now, as amended.
Okay. So that means, would someone be willing to add the caveat that staff assist Ms. Gilbert in making sure that that gets edited effectively, and that the committee will trust the new subcommittee of Ms. Gilbert and Metro Stormwater staff to do that?
I mean, that makes me a little nervous. I almost think that maybe you all should take a look at it at the following meeting and make sure it really captures what you intended.
Okay, so is it going to delay any policy decisions as a result?
In general, if the right of someone to file a petition for writ of certiorari runs actually from the date that the minutes are adopted. So if the minutes are, if the minutes are adopted 60 days out as opposed to 30 days out, then they may end up effectively having an 120-day period to file their writ of certiorari rather than a 90-day period as would normally be the case. So that would be the impact.
I think that's the tax you pay when you have to take more time to do it right. So, is that okay? So we haven't made a formal motion yet. So would someone like to make a formal motion that reflects the fact that we need to review these amended minutes in the next?
You might make a motion to defer the approval of the
committee meeting
minutes
and to
until the
defer.
following meeting when you can see them as revised.
I make a motion that we defer the minutes from March, so that to the next meeting, so that the committee can review those minutes and make a decision on those. Okay.
Second.
All right, motion been made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. All right. So now we are on the decision letters. So would anyone like to make a motion about the decision letters? Anybody have any edits to the decision letters? And again, I'll ask if you have any edits to the decision letters, let's try to make those all in one motion. So. Do we have that word issue on the last page of the last case as well? Ms. Maddox, did you check for that? Maybe a cut and paste. guess we have a decision letter about the, so did we need, Madam Counsel, I'm sorry, did we need a decision letter regarding the non-compliance case that we heard?
I believe all of the decisions of the committee are supposed to be in the form of a resolution, I think is what it says in the, hang on, let me flip to Appendix F.
I don't believe we had a decision to make. Isn't that what we determined?
Okay. All right.
What we determined is that we weren't being asked to decide anything.
Okay.
Well, the
then-
staff asked us to review it, but, we-
I'm sorry, that's the one I had to step out for, so
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure exactly what happened. I'll be honest, I haven't watched the video.
why don't we double check the meeting minutes and see what it had to say?
It's better than watching the video.
If you didn't take any action, I would say you don't need to do a letter.
Well, I
But-
mean, we did ask them to do a few things,
But I don't see where we took a vote.
but we didn't vote on it.
Okay. The minutes say we
Yeah,
didn't
if
take a vote on it.
if you don't
So if
vote,
we don't have a vote, we don't have
then
a decision.
you
letter.
haven't taken any action.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like we gave some general advice, which is, which comes with all kind of benefits. Okay, so does anybody have any kind of edits or concerns about decision letters? All right, seeing none, anybody want to make a motion about the decision letters?
Make a motion to approve the decision letters.
Okay, we have a motion from Ms. Anna Maddox that we approve the decision letters. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the decision letters? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Mr. Slade, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. This room's horrible.
It's full now that we're in the other room.
Our busy metro government.
Where are they going to sit? They're going to have to do it.
They're gonna have to
Okay.
go up at the podium.
We could. Okay, they don't have a
I
microphone for
thought
a
we were going to
table.
get to go back to the old cozy way of doing this. Apparently not. I don't make, it might make it easier. I mean, what do y'all, otherwise, I mean, you got one place for someone to stand, but not, there's multiple people.
No, what is it?
They won't be mic'd,
Oh,
so the podium will have to.
okay. Well, let's go this way. Change if we have to. So let's go ahead and turn to the first matter to be heard, which is, which one is it? Pennington Bend Road. If the applicant wants to come up and stand wherever you feel comfortable.
Wherever your
Near a
mind.
microphone.
Let's start off, Penny, with the opening statement, if you please.
Our opening statement to the applicant. If you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Committee, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied.
Thank you very much. Now, if the applicant would like to, actually, we turn to staff to hear a brief explanation of the request.
The first case on the agenda is case number 2017-00034, 2317 Pennington Bend Road. This is APN number 06209006100. Inspector is Logan Bowman under the supervision of Kimberly Hayes. Council District 15, Councilman Jeff Syracuse. This case was previously deferred on January 4th, 2018, with a request to allow the following. 1, disturbance of the 75-foot floodway buffer of the Cumberland River to construct 3 single-family houses on 3 separate parcels, to allow continuous mowing and maintenance of the buffer area, construction and encroachment of minimally disruptive hardscape to provide future dock access, placement of stream buffer signage in alternate location, and placement of stormwater BMPs in the buffer. Applicant's request is to allow the following: disturbance of the 75-foot floodway buffer of the Cumberland River to construct 2 single-family houses on 3 separate parcels, to allow continuous mowing and maintenance of the buffer area, construction and encroachment of minimally disruptive hardscape to provide future dock access, placement of stream buffer signage in alternate location, placement of stormwater BMPs in the buffer. The appellant is Carol G. Anderson, represented by Tripp Smith from Stone and Howarth Group. Comments: stormwater staff had no comments. Codes had no comments provided. Planning, site is zoned R15, defer to stormwater for review. And Greenways maintains original comment from January 4th, 2018. Requests the applicant to provide a Greenways conservation easement paralleling the Cumberland River.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to the applicant.
Good morning. Tripp Smith, S&H Group, civil engineer on the project, 2606 Eugenia Avenue. I believe the last time we were here, the committee acknowledged and appreciated at least some of our efforts in addressing the plan containing development structures within the Zone 2 buffer only, as well as the effort going through the Board of Zoning Appeals to decrease the street setback to 20 feet to push further out of the floodway buffer. I believe the major concerns from our last meeting were the density of the development and as well as the safety. And so the density has been reduced to 2 dwelling units per the revised plan. The buildable area has been reduced by 200 square feet, with impervious surfaces decreased by an additional 400 square feet with the elimination of the driveway. All of our variances that we are requesting are essentially the same. We are planning to completely revegetate the buffer with 6 new trees, preserving 2 of the trees that are existing on the lot, requesting a 12-foot width within the Zone 1 buffer to mow and maintain as practical for the rear unit access. And we just want to, if we could reserve time to respond to any opposition. Also, I believe some other members of the applicant group would like to speak. But I believe these were the major concerns as we addressed per our January meeting, and this is the revised plan that we've presented, and I'd be happy to, at the appropriate time, answer any questions regarding the revised plan. And I would like to let Carol Anderson, the owner of the property, come up and speak, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Carol Anderson, 536 Rivercrest Cove, 37214. And 30 years ago, I purchased these 3 lots, and they were unencumbered, they were buildable, and I've been paying property tax on those lots for 30 years. And I'm just asking for consistency. Others have gotten this variance, and it seems that those who are opposed are the next-door neighbors who would like to keep that property open and undeveloped, which is a real luxury, but I can't afford that luxury. And so I know we have density problems in Nashville. We're growing by 80 to 100 a day, they say. And so we want to grow sensibly and responsibly. And I just think that if we could have fairness, I'm not asking for any favors, just fairness. There's building going on right across the street, which the opposition is fine with. But I think because it's next door to them, they would prefer no building. And so I just want to address the fact that I need to have these developed after this long investment. And I appreciate your concerns. And if you have any questions, I hope you'll bring them up. I know Councilman Syracuse is supposed to be representing all of the property owners down there. And so I'm not asking for any favors, I'm just asking for fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adam Epstein, 3704 Hobbs Road. Just two quick things we need to look at, and there's things that Commissioner Galbraith brought up before, and one of them is density.
Mr. Epstein, you're here to talk in favor of the grant?
Yeah, in favor.
Okay. Let's do that as in order, unless you're part of the presentation of the applicant itself.
Say that again?
He is. He's representing, you're representing her.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
That helps.
It was good. Well, I know that you've been here talked on these things before. I just wasn't sure how the order was here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, didn't explain that. I just want to do a quick couple of handouts. But on the density question, and this out too, you've got this is the plat that we're all working off of. We've got a plat. We've got a plat from 1925 that's everybody's working on. 60% of the lots are 50 feet wide, and then 37% of the lots are 100 feet wide, and you've got a few in the middle of that. So most of the lots over there are 50-foot wide lots. So the density has already been there, and it's been there since 1925. Also, 30% of the lots have been purchased by Metro. So this is one of the few streets that we've reduced the density on because Metro's come in and bought up so many of the lots. The other question is safety, and I just wanted to bring up two cases that you guys have ruled on in the past that Kimberly has gone over with you guys probably about 4 or 5 months ago when she did a review of everything you guys have done. The first one is a lot at Riverview Drive that was similar to what it's on the Cumberland River. It only has one entrance in and out, and it's a private road for about 20 houses. And I'll hand out that. You've seen this before, but I'll hand that out to you too. And the other case is the case at 2301 Pennington Bend Road for the Lawlers, where they were given a variance. This lot is 2 lots over from our lot. And that lot, she came back twice, and you gave them a full disturbance of Zone 1 and Zone 2, the full 75 feet. So we're only asking for the 25-foot zone. They got both of those 2 lots down from us. So I just wanted to hand that out, and you guys can look at that again. And then also, the house next door to us, we've got the elevation statement on that house, the elevation certificate, and that house is 6 feet into the floodplain. So no matter if we tear down every house on the street, the house next door to us is still going to flood because it's 6 feet below where it should be. That will flood anytime it happens. So I can't do anything about my neighbors being so low. We're going to be out of the floodplain. We're just not above the floodplain. We're not even in the floodplain for the building envelopes for these houses. Any questions at all?
Question on that elevation certificate?
Yeah.
Which you're referring to my house on that one.
Hold on, sir. No, we can't
How
take
can you do
questions
that?
from the,
Yeah.
all right. Are you done with your presentation? Okay. The applicant? Okay. Well, are you, I don't understand. This whole table thing's messing me up.
Yeah.
Let's just make sure everyone understands. The applicant gives this presentation, and then there's an opportunity for people who either want to speak in opposition to the variance or in favor of the variance. And we will get to that portion of the.
Yeah, she's just going to speak in favor so we can wait on her.
Okay.
So we can go on to the opposite side now.
Yeah, my understanding, Mr. Epstein, is you were providing part of the presentation of the
Yeah.
applicant themselves,
Yeah.
hence the paper and the information we have, and that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And then, so the applicant wanted to reserve time?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, and then we'll allow that. Okay, now let's move to people that may be here to speak in opposition to the variance. And if you could, come up one at a time, clearly provide your name and your address, and I think, was it 3 minutes? This is a recent thing. 2 minutes.
I think it's people in favor first and then opposition after.
Okay, so we're going to do in favor first, and then please keep your comments to 2 minutes. So we'll start that now. If anyone's here to speak in favor of, is the council member here that wants to speak? Actually, that does go first. You'd rather go last? Your choice. Okay, so anyone here in favor of the granting of the variance?
This is confusing, to say the least. I'm Mary O'Neill, and I live at 2219 Pennington Bend. I think I'd rather have a root canal than carry this on as long as we have, but I feel pretty strongly about it. In all transparency, I am a realtor. Sometimes that seems to be portrayed in a bad light, but I am a realtor, and I have represented homes on this street. But I do love this street. Some of the things that I feel very strongly about as we have carried this situation on is that in the beginning, this was a request for 3 houses on 3 lots, not some of the density that we've seen throughout Nashville, where you have multiple homes. It was suggested to us by this committee that perhaps we get together and see if we could compromise. Any requests that we made to get together were denied. And so, still in the spirit of compromise, this builder has said that he would reduce it to 2 houses, and they would be out of the floodplain, but he would include features that still made it more desirable, with things like flood vents and other features, and planting woodland plants. The floodway, or the buffers, the way I understand it, and this has been an educational process, which I don't mind, is the buffers aren't really there to prevent any flooding. They're there about water quality. But what has really turned my head since January is that I have emails from the councilman and from the opposition where there are 2 other requests in the neighborhood. One is to take a property and make it commercial zoning. There has been no opposition to that. A commercial zone does change the traffic pattern down there, which is a continued problem, and there was no opposition this time. There's also a request for a single-family resident down the street, and I have emails from the councilman and from the Lawlers, both saying they would not oppose this. And so I feel like that this is really a personal problem. I think it's become mean-spirited. I know it has become mean-spirited as a neighbor. It's unbelievable. But I think this is simply about the properties next to them, because they have no problem with the house going in down the street in the floodplain. And I brought 1 set of these because I know it's all fascinating reading for y'all. But there you go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on. Anyone else here in favor, that would like to speak in favor of granting the variance request? All right, seeing none, let's move to people who may be here to speak in opposition to the variance request. If you'd like to come up, please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Please state your name and your address first and foremost.
Hi, Travis Lawler, 2315 Pennington Bend Road.
So I just want to say, first and foremost, this new 2-home proposal from the developer differs only slightly from the previous 3-home proposal that the board said it would likely reject at the January meeting because it was because of the density. According to the plans submitted by the developer, the previous proposal had 2,611 square feet of development within the Zone 2 buffer. This one has 2,520 square feet. It's only a 91 square foot difference within the Zone 2 buffer. In addition, they're still attempting to take advantage of an exception in Metro Code that allows them to build at greater density than our R15 minimum lot size requires. That's 15,000 square feet minimum lot size. These 3 lots together are just over 20,000 square feet. They're claiming they have 3 non-conforming lots, but those 3 non-conforming lots are all owned by the same person and they're contiguous, so they could easily have 1 lot that complies with our R15 zoning and build 1 home there. I don't think that, well, the property owner has in fact said, Carol Anderson said at the January meeting that she had purchased the property with the intention of building a single home there. And your rules require that any variance granted be the minimum necessary to afford relief. So I don't see how allowing 2 homes on a property that's only big enough for 1 home under our current zoning is the minimum necessary. Finally, the property does not have a unique hardship that would qualify it for a variance. The hardship it faces is the same as nearly every other property along the riverside of Pennington Bend in Miami, and there are about 40 other small undeveloped lots where the owners would probably like to seek a similar variance if you grant this one. Also, let me just say that there are 2 properties that have been mentioned. One is the commercial property is not on Pennington Bend. It's on a commercial road, Music Valley Drive. It's completely out of the floodplain. And the other property is a single home on 3.5 acres. So that's very different from what is being proposed here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the variance request? Please state your name and your address first, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is George Dean. I'm an attorney representing Ms. Lawler and her father. My address is downtown, 315 Demonbreun Street. I want to just talk about a few of the requirements in terms of a variance from the stormwater management regulations. I'm looking at section F1.1.2, variance considerations. And I'll just point out a couple of things. Generally speaking, all of the variance criteria have to be met by the applicants. There are several here listed in your regulations that suggest to me that there's just no way that they can be met. For example, one of the sections talks about the importance of the services being provided by the proposed facility to the community. And I recognize that these are outside the normal variance criteria. For example, the applicant focused entirely on specific variance criteria in one section, but didn't look at any of these or address any of these that I'm going to talk about. The importance of the services provided by the proposed facility, frankly, extremely low. This is a residence, 2 residences proposed. The importance of having them at this location is minimal, if any. E says the necessity of the facility to a waterfront location in the case of a functionally dependent facility. Again, it's not a functionally dependent facility. A waterfront location for these particular properties really has nothing to do with the application. The availability of alternative locations not subject to flooding or erosion damage. Well, depending on how you look at it, if you look across the county, there are obviously all kinds of alternative locations. The location at this particular spot in the county is simply not important from the standpoint of the overall density if you're talking about people coming into Davidson County, where people are moving, and those kinds of things. So again, pursuant to your own regulations, that was G, I believe, F, the availability of alternative locations. I talks about the safety of access to the property in times of flood for ordinary emergency services, and I think the committee has heard a lot of testimony over the years about this particular roadway and the problems it faced in 2010, the difficulty of actually accessing, and the problems that the properties in that area of the county had. And once again, this requirement of your regulations simply cannot be met by the applicant. Finally, subsection K, and there are others, but these are just the highlights, the cost of providing governmental services during and after flood conditions, including maintenance and repair of public utilities. And again, the cost to the local government in terms of that, after the floods in May of 2010, were extremely high. In fact, one of the reasons that we have the 30% of the homes that have been purchased there was precisely because of the problems the Metro faced before, during, and after the flooding in May of 2010. I want to just make one other provision. I haven't heard any discussion of this, but just in the case, from time to time, there's concerns about unifying 2 or 3 lots into a single lot and the impact on the property owner. And sometimes there's a concern that it works a take of the property from a constitutional standpoint. And I just wanted to say there's a couple of U.S. Supreme Court cases on that where exactly this kind of scenario happened, where the local government required 2 or 3 units, parcels, to be collapsed into one with a single-family residence on the remaining one parcel. And in each occasion, the most recent being Murr versus State of Wisconsin, the U.S. Supreme Court said that was entirely appropriate action by the municipality. It's within the judgment of this committee, obviously, but to the extent that the committee feels that it's appropriate, collapsing these 3 parcels into one and allowing one home may be the best answer to the problem here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to granting the variance? If you could first state your name and your address, sir. Thanks.
My name is Richard Lawler. I live at 2313 Pennington Bend. It was at one time when we bought it, 2301 Pennington Bend, which is what Mr. Epstein referred to. We bought that before the flood. I want to clarify his statements. Before the flood, when there was no floodway problem. We didn't have the buffers and so on and so forth. So when it came before the committee, we were allowed to build a single-family home under R15 zoning. We still have R15 zoning on Pennington Bend. You have not yet allowed anyone to build a more dense zoning, a more dense situation there in Pennington Bend. If you allow this one, you will have breached that barrier. There will be no more R15 on Pennington Bend. There are over 40 properties undeveloped on Pennington Bend who could point to this as a precedent to say, well, you let Mr. Epstein build on a density greater than R15, why not let me? Now, I've looked up the definition of precedent in the Oxford Dictionary, and I'll read it to you. I don't want to take more time than I'm allowed, but I've got to read this. And it's an earlier event or action that is regarded as an example or guide to be considered in subsequent similar circumstances. You had a situation at 2319 Pennington Bend, 2 lots up from this one, where a young couple from the north came down to build a dream home on a 50-foot lot. It went through 3 sessions of this committee, 3 sessions, and I know it was a precedent because Mr. Epstein and all his crew were there at every meeting pleading for you to pass that zoning. And in the end, you turned it down 6-1. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to granting the variance?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Jeff Syracuse, 15th District Councilman. So Mr. Epstein did reach out to me. I'm thankful for that, and showed me this plan. And so I did what my job is, and I sent that out to the community for feedback. And as you all have received, the vast majority of the community still, as Mr. Lawler states, feels that this is just too dense. I am thankful that there's not really an encroachment on the Zone 1 buffer. There's only a Zone 2 But again, as Carol mentions, I need to represent the majority of my constituents, and based on the feedback that I received, they are just not in favor of that. And I would mention also, as Travis mentioned also, Ms. O'Neill just does not have her facts correct. 2400 Pennington Bend Road is actually, it's the 180-acre Gleaves Farm, and only 2 acres of that's only going to front Music Valley Drive is the rezoning. And then the other is a single-family house, and they're currently at the BZA for the sidewalk variance. That's what's going on there. As you know, I have pending legislation. I've talked to this committee a lot about that. I don't want to be coming back here 43 different times, to get this variance. So in order to preserve and protect the Zone 1 buffer, I have legislation that basically would disallow any future variances in the Zone 1. So I think that would be a very sustainable way to go. So I'm hopeful that will pass. But again, we're here. I would ask that you not allow this variance. All right, thank you.
Councilman, if you don't mind, ask a question while you're... Sure. Because I was going to ask about the legislation. I knew that was pending. So it would only prevent variances that would allow new homes within the Zone 1 area.
Is Zone 2. All right. Zone 1, it would disallow, basically it says to preserve, establish and preserve a 50-foot floodway buffer along the Cumberland River. So it would have a no disturb zone in the Zone 1 buffer. And only
along. And it's the Cumberland across countywide.
Right.
I mean,
yes.
Okay.
And only in residential properties. So
Right.
I've already gotten some curiosities about River North property and that kind of thing. $1 billion of development. It's not going to impact River North. It's only for residential development.
Mainly, I want to know, just for purposes of our decision today,
Sure.
it would not affect this variance request.
No, I don't believe it would.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
I just want to make that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Even if it did, if you're thinking about the pending legislation document,
Right.
I think that's the zoning
Right.
related.
Yeah, and I just wanted to know so we try to do things consistent with what. There are other people at the table that have that issue. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to the granting the variance? All right, seeing none. We do have a number of letters that were written. For the record, want to make sure that it's known that everyone in this committee has those letters. They're in front of us in our packets, and we're going to quickly read off the names, Ms. Penny, if you would, of the people that provided those letters. Looks like these are letters in opposition.
Okay, all the letters were in opposition. Pam Miller, President of River Glen Homeowners Association. Anthony and Susan Fox at 2809 Pennington Bend Road. Jerry and Louise Stevenson at 2335 Pennington Bend. Roger Wells at 2441 Pennington Bend. Excuse me. Jeannie and Eugene Ward at 2539 Miami Avenue. Dorothea Hartley, there wasn't an address given. Kim Serena at 2627 Miami. Richard Lawler at 2313 Pennington Bend. Phil Claiborne at 2911 Western Hills Drive. Travis Lawler at 2315 Pennington Bend. And Steve Eagle and Kenny Warlock at 2327 Pennington Bend.
Thank you very much. Now let's open the discussion and questions for the committee. And if the representative would come up to the mic, sure, that would be great. I appreciate it.
Can I respond to a couple things, or you just want to field questions?
I'd like you to respond to a couple things. How about that?
So the first thing, I guess, is density and how we're defining that. I mean, typically that's defined as units per acre. And so as the opposition mentioned, if we were to collapse these lots and make them one contiguous property for an R15, that is a zoning designation that's designed for single-family and two-family dwellings. So if you were, you would be over, I think you'd be roughly 30,000 square feet, maybe a little bit less, a little over 25,000 square feet. So by right, I believe, and Roy can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but by right, I believe you'd be able to do 2 units on a contiguous lot. So the density complies with the land use and surrounding development. If we're looking apples to apples at the 2011 variance that was granted that you guys are looking at, that proposed plan was roughly 2,800 square feet of building area on a 100-foot wide lot. What we've proposed in this plan, yes, there is a separate single-family 50-foot wide lot that we're doing a 1 unit on, but if you look at the 100-foot wide lot for the second home, we're looking at a 2,000 square foot buildable area, surface area disturbance, which would, be much less than what was proposed in that plan in 2011, a year after the flood, and the variance that was granted associated with that. So I just want to field that. I think, also the attorney spoke somewhat about regulations. We are, with this property, it is not in a regulated floodplain. There is a floodway. We are buffered from the floodway boundary. There is per the new map, I believe that was accepted April 2017. There is not a 100-year floodplain outside of that floodway boundary on this property. There's a 500-year floodplain, but there's not a 100-year. Despite all that, all of the developed structure is completely out of the base flood elevation of 420.1, at a finished floor elevation of 4 feet above that base flood elevation. So we feel like we've taken, everything that we can do to develop this, to push closer to the street, to get as far as possible out of the floodway buffer, to not disturb the Zone 1 buffer other than what is practical to mow and maintain immediately behind the house. And I think, I know it was just introduced to council on Tuesday, but I've read the councilman's bill. And I believe this development as designed complies with the councilman's bill. There is some potential gray as far as the 12-foot of mow maintain within the Zone 1 buffer. And is that really disturbance, and how is that going to be defined once the bill is passed? But we are not disturbing the Zone 1 buffer and are completely into the Zone 2 buffer, which is what that bill is kind of set up to do. So we are here to get a variance from the regulations as they are written, but if that bill were to pass, I think we would comply with that bill per this proposed line.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, now, any questions from the committee?
Could you go back to that map that showed the individual parcels? I guess it's your site plan. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
So, I can't read it, but the lot furthest to the right, is that 31? Is that what that is?
Yes, correct.
So 31 and 30, what are the size of, do you know the square footage of those 2 parcels? Do you have any idea?
I think they're 0.16 acres per GIS. I think per the 1925 plat, they're bigger. So like 190 by 50 for each lot, roughly 195 by 50.
So they're a little bit less than 10,000 square feet each, is that what you're saying? So what's the total square footage of all these parcels added together? Someone said it wasn't 20,000?
0.48 acres per GIS or 195, so I don't have a calculator, but 195 by 50.
But it's less than 3,000 square feet?
195 by 150.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right. Well, while we're looking that up, I mean, I'm sort of disappointed that, everybody couldn't get together and work something out.
We are too.
Yeah. But that's the only question I had of you. So,
Okay.
All right. So if you'll go back to go ahead.
What was that square footage, Todd, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it was, I have to do it again.
29,000.
It was
About 29,000.
almost 30,000 square feet.
And 150 by what?
Yeah, it's 49 and change for each lot, but 150 by 195.
29,000 and change is what it came out to.
Okay.
What is that number? Why, I don't understand all this density stuff. I don't get involved in that. I'm here for
Well, I understand.
So if you could explain that to me.
Well, I think one of the things that was the discussion about is that they shouldn't be allowed to build on a non-conforming lot. They prefer the lots to be at least 15,000 square feet. So I was just curious if there was enough square footage here to create two 15,000 square foot lots. I think the opposition says there probably isn't, and I think there's probably fairly close. But the bottom line to me is I'm disappointed that they couldn't come together with some solution. To me, it would probably be better if they could do that, to divide this into two equal lots instead of having one large house and one small house. But if you go back to the aerial, I mean, I'm all about fairness, and I think that both sides have really good positions. Or if you go back and if you look at the lots that are south of this, you can see how wide they are, how big they are. It's almost equivalent to this lot being added, consolidated into one parcel. But if you also look at those houses on those other lots, they're all in the Zone 1 and all in the Zone 2 buffers too. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, sort of my opinion. So if we just talked about consolidating this into one parcel, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to put all the house up in the very front of this lot. So again, I'm just sort of disappointed. I would hope that people could get together, but it seems to me that it's even gotten more contentious than it was before. I'm not sure what the solution is. If we were looking at these individual parcels all individually, I assume that they would all be considered as being hardship parcels. We're fortunate that we have one property owner that owns them all, and so there's some flexibility here to maybe create something that could work. I'm not convinced the community would even support one house on all of these three parcels. That would be unfortunate, since that's pretty much what they have. So I'm going to let someone else talk. Those are just my initial opinions.
Mr. Chairman, just a question, clarity, I guess. I mean, we're not the zoning commission, so
No.
approving this is not based on how the density.
That's correct. I mean, I think the density discussion came up during our last meeting on this issue, because certainly we're supposed to grant a variance. If we're going to grant a variance, the variance needs to be the minimum amount that we could grant to allow whatever we think the hardship, to accommodate the hardship there. And so we were looking at density just as, okay, well, wait a minute. Yeah, maybe they do deserve a variance here, but that doesn't mean they can build, the Taj Mahal. And so we were looking at what exactly they were going to do.
And I think legal counsel had provided us with some expertise many meetings ago when we talked about what we should consider. And there was something in there that talked about consistency within the neighborhood, as I recall.
Yeah. Well, I think that it goes to whether or not what they would reasonably expect to be able to build on a lot.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you drive through the neighborhood, and this is what everyone else is.
And what I see are large parcels with really large buildings within the Zone 1 and Zone 2 buffer.
I think that's related to the information we got on what percentage of the lots are 100, what percentage of the lots are 50 feet. I mean, that's what's in the neighborhood.
To speak to Mr. Dale's point, F1.1.2, variance considerations, G does talk about the compatibility of the proposed use with existing and anticipated development.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I think just to finish on that statement, we do look at density just with respect to granting the variance, but we as a body can't grant variances on density, what's allowed. I mean, we're not, anything we're doing here doesn't allow them to build something they wouldn't be allowed to build. Right.
So if you take two non-conforming lots and consolidate them, can you do that and just have one non-conforming lot?
I'm not a lawyer, so.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that's basically what we're doing. Or the proposal is to keep one lot as it is, so it's a non-conforming lot, and then take two non-conforming lots and consolidate them into one, I assume, non-conforming lot. So I don't know if that's.
I don't know if I don't know how the phrase non-conforming lot applies in the stormwater context.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you all need to be looking at is it the minimum necessary?
Okay.
That's the criteria that stormwater has in its rules, and that the FCC also has. I'm sorry. I've been doing way too much telecom.
That's possible, though. They like to get involved in a lot of stuff.
Got a different vibe today.
Okay, never mind.
We get you.
But that is what both the federal regs and your own internal rules of procedure require you to do, is to consider and grant. Actually, it's not a variance consideration. There is a list of variance considerations that Mr. Dean helpfully took us through. But there's also a list of conditions for variances. And the conditions for variances are the things that we've talked about extensively before. The exceptional hardship, the minimum necessary, and these are prerequisites, basically, for granting a variance. And so it's the minimum necessary criteria that really brings you into the density discussion. Maybe the planning guidance is sort of helpful by analogy or something like that, but really you're just looking at, is this the minimum necessary for the purposes of granting a variance to achieve a reasonable buildable.
I see on the document here that the city bought, I guess, lots 34, 35, and 36, which are really right next to these lots in question now. Is there a reason why those lots were bought and not the 31, 32 Ms. Anderson's lots? Because I think one of the letters mentioned that the house on the property was not salvageable. It's kind of...
Roger Lindsay is here.
Yeah.
Roger, can you speak to that?
I've got a cold, so I don't hear very well. What was your question again?
So as we're looking at the lots that were purchased by Metro, because of,
Yes.
what were the, I guess, the reasons behind purchasing lots 34, 35, and 36 and not the 31, 32, 33 that belong to?
Well, that's a very specific question.
Or kind of the general, they seem to be right next to each other.
Okay.
Was there an offer made for these particular lots?
We did not make offers on vacant lots.
Okay.
There were a couple of very, maybe extreme cases where there may have been some done that way, but predominantly because of the sheer mass of requests post-flood, the sheer mass of requests, everybody wanted to be bought out in the early days in flood recovery. And so the criteria we defined was that a house had to be in the floodway of a river or creek, and it had to be more than 50% damaged. It had to be substantially damaged in accordance with FEMA's defined measure of damage. And so that's how we started off, and we had more than enough houses to consume the federal dollars that were available to make those purchases. There were, I think, a few extreme cases where there may have been a house with a small parcel adjacent to it. There may have been a few that were acquired like that, but for the most part, we just didn't have the resources to just go and try to capture every vacant lot, given the number of people that had houses with that also wanted to be bought. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll weigh in on this. Okay, it helps me in the way I think, just to kind of review some of the fundamental issues. One is we allow mowing in the Zone 2 because our primary goal is to reduce or avoid imperviousness, right? We don't want imperviousness in Zone 2. So if we grant construction of a impervious building in the Zone 2, we're increasing imperviousness in the Zone 2. Okay, we don't typically grant variances in the Zone 1 because that's kind of the last line of defense for the stream. It's a buffer to the floodway. We don't allow mowing because we want it to be spongy. A water quality and a water quantity component. Staff reviewed the history. I think Michael Hunt did the research on this and found that there is a water quality and a water quantity component history to the formation of our buffer regulations. So, the issue of density, I think as was referenced to me earlier, and other people have kind of covered that, have covered my comments last time on this. The issue of density is really about how much imperviousness are we willing to grant a variance for in the Zone 2, right? 2 houses or 1 house or no house. The regulations encourage us not to grant any variance at all related to imperviousness. So even one house would be sacrificing a public policy purpose for the Zone 2. Now, there have been cases where we voted in the majority, I voted in the majority, to grant constructions of homes in Zone 2s where compatible development, mitigation, a combination of other factors, limited footprint, prior investment expectations have all factored into a cumulative reason for the variance. The hardship question normally would be significant leverage. I don't see physical characteristics of this lot that are unique to this lot that are not shared by many other lots up and down this area. So there's not really a property hardship, a physical property hardship here. So the question is to me, do we want to grant a variance in regard to imperviousness in the Zone 2? And right now we have two houses. In the previous meeting, I asked Ms. Anderson what her investment expectations were, and I remember her saying her original investment expectation was to build one house here. And then I also remember discussing, I'll try not to be an expert witness here on this, but I've got a master's in urban and regional planning, and I remember from land use law that investment expectations can be regulated after there have been duly public noticed, duly public debated plan proposals and public policies, and fully executed decisions by city councils, planning commissions, county commissions, and so forth. And those investment expectations can be altered by a majority of public opinion, or at least a majority of the vote of the executive and legislative representatives of a community.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yes.
So when that was done was when the buffer was adopted in the first place.
Yes.
What we are all here to do now is to grant or not grant a variance, or
Yes.
what you all are here to do.
Yes.
And so that stage has passed.
Yes.
So really your considerations that you're supposed to take into account are based on the property itself, not the person who owns it, because
Yes.
properties change hands, and something specific to the person who owns it may be different when you have a new owner subsequently, but the property is still encumbered by whatever the variance allowed to be built on it. So at this stage, that investment-backed expectation is not really relevant to your analysis as it might have been at the time that the regulation was adopted.
And that's where I was going with that. So you did it much more efficiently. So this proposal stretches that expectation quite a bit to me.
Any other questions, discussions from the committee for the applicant? So this variance that was approved in 2011, I guess we were given a copy of. Where is it on this map, on our drawing, on our property map? Is it the adjacent parcel? Is it?
I believe it's
2301 Pennington Bend Road?
Or I'm sorry, south.
And so a variance was granted at that time to build a house totally within the, totally 100% in the buffer, Zone 1 and Zone 2.
Well, that's my house.
Okay.
Had the buffer moved between then and now? There was some zoning.
Any other questions, discussion from the committee? I'll go ahead and lay out my normal spiel on all these things. First, I will say that on all my time on this committee, the houses along Pennington and Miami are the only ones that we've treated this way in the whole county that I'm aware of. The whole uniqueness issue, that they're not unique because they're like all the houses next to them. Again, this is the only place we've ever applied that definition. I can think in Green Hills where we've got that row of houses, and I can't think of the name of the street, but I drive down it all the time. It's a pass-through for me. But Warfel, thank you very much. Warfel, every one of those houses is along a creek that's got a buffer. And if we're going to use this definition that it's not unique because the lots next to it aren't unique, then all of the variances we granted there, those would have a hardship. It's just we're using that definition, or that definition is being grasped onto in order to make a case against these things. I'm not aware, other than the couple that came in front of us that we've talked about. It's funny how everybody remembers they're from the north. But they came in and wanted to build a house, and we turned that down. And there was one other, and those are the only two. And the other one was someone who was in retirement age and had the property for a while. Those are the only two that I am aware of in the history that I've been on this committee that we've denied a variance at all to build on their property.
The second one was a southerner.
The second one was a southerner. She was from here. Sorry, what a northern south.
We're equal opportunity.
So I see that we've been treating this area different from the rest of the county. I don't believe that's right. I don't believe that we're supposed to, or don't think that I don't think there's a doubt this property has a hardship. And anytime that we've seen other requests come in front of us where there's a hardship, we typically push hard not to allow them to build within that first zone, but then we allow them to build in that second zone. And that's exactly what they're asking for here. I understand the density issue, but again, density is only in relation to what they should be expected to build. I think that Roy's pointed out a good point that like other homes on the street, you've got 100-foot lots, 50-foot lots, all they're doing is putting one on 100-foot and one on a 50. And that's consistent with what's out there. Best I can tell, I may be missing something, but it's consistent with what's out there. And as far as the variance request goes, it's just to be consistent with what's out there. And so I just have a hard time understanding how you can deny this request when it's exactly what's asked for every other time everywhere else. I understand that no one wants to build, that as a community, we don't want people to build on the river. And especially people that have houses across the street. I mean, the values of their homes go up. And so I can see how people want that, but if that's going to be a city decision, council can pass a bill, and they've got legislation pending. And what's, to me, although it's not applicable to this request, to me, it's very relevant that that legislation pending now, which may not even pass, still wouldn't prevent this development. And so, I'm in the same place I was on the other ones. I don't see how you don't grant some variance here.
Can I make a little clarification just on to your point? So we've been using the word unique a lot, and that word came from the FEMA guidance document, which is just guidance. It is not binding on this board. It's persuasive maybe, but what our rules actually say is exceptional hardship. Our rules don't use the word unique. They only use the word exceptional, which to me means it needs to be the exception rather than the rule. But the unique, it comes from the FEMA guidance, which talks about the unique characteristics must pertain to the land and the property itself, as opposed to, the individual who owns the property. But I mean, I almost wonder if that's maybe a little bit of an overuse of the word unique. I mean, as long as it is the exception and not the rule, you're looking for an exceptional hardship. So maybe it doesn't have to be quite as extreme a standard as that.
Thank you.
And just to play the devil's advocate, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I think a lot of the ones we looked at before, how this is unique, is that this was all flooded. The ones along Warfield, they weren't underwater in 2010. And so it was really a safety issue really came into play, and the cost of public dollars to go out there and to help those folks if that flood were to occur again. So that was one factor we looked at. And the other one is that pretty much all of these lots, people own 2 or more lots. So there are no 50-foot, very few 50-foot lots with buildings on them along this street. I think I see one on the list, or one that a 50-foot lot is owned. Now, there are a lot of 50-foot lots, but most of them are, people own 2 or 3 or 4 of them in a row.
They were sold in groups.
Right. So that building on that 50-foot lot would be unusual for the neighborhood.
Thank you.
So we've talked about the Zone 2 impacts, and that's where we've been focused, but we haven't really talked about the Zone 1. And so there is a request for this knowing of the 12 feet and the dock. And I guess just help me remember in past discussions, I mean, that's not something typically allowed a variance for.
No, in past discussion, we typically do. If we allow them to build in that first area, then we allow them to use some limited portion of the next zone, usually. I mean, if it's right up against, usually I think 10 feet, where you let them go in 10 feet or something like that. My recollection is that's consistent with what our past.
But the committee's been pretty protective of Zone 1.
Putting a building. The big thing has been a building during the past, however long I've been on, 4 or 5 years. Does anybody have any other questions or discussion?
I have one more question. Either side, the applicant or the opposition. So was there an attempt to establish a meeting, and was that a meeting of community denied, or?
There was, and I don't have the email, but I did send emails out requesting. There were some neighbors that were willing, but the parties that are in opposition, Mr. Syracuse and Mr. Lawler, would not meet.
Well, let me make sure that that's correct.
That's not true.
Come on. I want to hear about that.
Consistency, inconsistency. I put it out there to the community. I have a vast email network. I know pretty much everybody on Pennington Bend. I represent 1,100 homes. I put it out there. I got nobody that told me that they wanted this. I didn't see the need to have a meeting. I mean, obviously, we've been going through this a lot. This is the second time. But the plan was out there. Last time, we didn't even have a plan. So at least this time, there was thanks to Mr. Epstein, that there was actually something that they could see. So it was put out there. There was no need to have a meeting. I felt very confident that I was representing what the community wanted, which is that they didn't want this. So I didn't see the need for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? We've got a lot of matters to handle today. Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve as requested. We get a second on the motion to approve?
Second.
Got a second on the motion to approve as requested. Open it up for discussion for the motion on the table.
I want to discuss something.
All right.
I hate this. I think that this committee is bound to take an action based upon an application that has legitimate request for hardship. And I think that's what we have. I had hoped perhaps that people would get together and come up with a plan that maybe they would be more adapt to agree with or have less opposition of. But the fact that maybe that didn't happen, we only have this plan that's before us today. It may not be the best plan, but it's the only one we have. And I think that it complies with what I would consider a hardship.
The discussion, there's a motion on the table. It's been seconded.
I'd like to offer some discussion as well. I think we'd have a much more debatable position if this was a one-house proposal, similar to the other lots and the other types of buildings that are there. But given Metro's investment in setting aside owner-occupied lands and removing homes to create less risk to the community, less burden on the taxpayer, less number of people to rescue during a flood, and to preserve the buffer, a 12-foot wide strip times 2 times the length from the distance of the edge of the Zone 1 down to the water is quite a bit of square foot of disturbance, of mowed, disturbed buffer. And I realize it's probably mowed now. The development is what would trigger not mowing it. But the goal is to try to preserve as much as this waterfront as possible. It's been along the Zone 1 buffer, and to keep the Zone 2 impervious. All of that's been publicly noticed, publicly debated, and approved as regulation. I think there are too many houses on this site. I think the boat docks will increase the amount of damage to the buffer just due to the traffic and carrying petroleum down there and carrying all kinds of equipment and people moving up and down. It's gonna take a buffer that even in its mow condition is gonna make it worse. I think it's bad public policy to allow this as it's currently proposed. But frankly, I'd still have a hard time, given the risk to the taxpayer and the community, both fiscally and otherwise, to grant any variance, because it's already a public policy expectation. The reason we've granted more variances in less risky areas is because we're trying to be flexible with property rights. We're trying to be flexible with mitigation that can offset it. I don't see any mitigation here that's effective either. 6 trees are not mitigation for what they're proposing. I do not think we should vote to approve this, and I'm going to vote against it.
Any discussion? Let's put it up for a vote. There's a motion on the table. It's been seconded to approve the variance as requested. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
I'm abstaining.
You got that abstention? All right, the motion does not pass.
Move on.
Hour and a half. You got to give it a full debate, or you're not giving them their fair.
We'll keep doing it until we get sued. It's going to be
That's a fair review.
Okay, let's move on to the second matter. If the applicant would come up just to stand next to the podium. So I know you're here. Great, thank you. And were you here, sir, when we read the opening statement? Yes, I was. Okay, wonderful. Then, and is your client here?
Yes.
Were you here too?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful, thank you. Then we won't need to read the open statement again. We'll go ahead and turn to staff. Just give everybody a minute to get out of here. Clear out, please. All right.
I don't know if we need to know that.
Yes, she had told me she had to leave.
Oh, Anna's leaving?
Yes, she had told me.
For good?
Yeah.
Okay.
As they're clearing out, I assure you that the other ones aren't as complex.
I
was thinking,
I know all these.
I remember you.
All right.
I feel like they should have
We'll
gotten
turn the mic over to staff to give us a brief description of this variance request.
Thank you, Chairman. Steve Mishu, presenting case number 2018-00007. It's the B&A employee parking lot at 1616 Murfreesboro Pike. The map parcel is 121, parcel 107. This is Councilman District Councilwoman District Holly Huezo. The inspector is Donald Irves. Second line, flip the page. It was a previously granted preliminary approval. It was 2017-00029 on December 7, 2017, to allow the removal of a wetland and its associated buffers, disturbance of stream buffers from Macquarie Creek, and to allow grading and removal of existing impervious area in the Zone 1 buffer. Applicant's current request is to remove 1.2 acres of wetland and associated buffers, stream buffer disturbance for grading and removing of impervious areas. The appellant is Metropolitan Airport Authority, being represented by Mr. Zach Dufour of Kimley Horn. Staff comments. The mitigation proposed has decreased since the preliminary. The 80% unit, water quality unit, is required for its permit treatment practices and can't be counted as mitigation. Recommend that the applicant work with staff on enhanced landscaping as part of mitigation. Coast provided no comment. Planning, this is Metro Airport project, defer to stormwater. Greenways also defer to stormwater. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll turn the floor over to the applicant. Brief presentation.
Thank you. I'm Zach Dufour. I'm with Kimley Horn & Associates, civil engineer representing the airport on this project. As Mr. Mishu stated, we were before the board in early December for a preliminary meeting, which was granted. That variance was granted on a preliminary basis. Since then, as was stated, again, all of the requests remain the same. None of the requests or acreage or anything has gotten larger. Since then, we've received our notice of coverage permit from TDEC. We've received our individual ARAP from TDEC, and we've received our Army Corps permit for the project. We've paid into the Wetland Mitigation Bank and completed all of our state and federal permitting. So we're obviously, that's why we're here back for a final variance request. The plans have been submitted to Stormwater. Virtually everything's stayed the same. Just to address the staff comments, the 80% water quality unit, we understand that's not considered mitigation. If we stated that, that was just a typo. We understand that's to replace the pond that's there now, and that's purely to meet the water quality requirements, so we weren't considering that, and that comment is acknowledged. The comment about the mitigation decreasing, on the preliminary approval, we had proposed to take two existing 50% water quality units that were draining into the existing detention pond and repurpose them on a different area of the site, while also installing an 80% water quality unit on that existing detention pond. Through further detail and further plan development, that became more difficult than it sounded to repurpose those units. Kind of like putting a oil filter from your lawnmower onto your car. You know, it just wasn't really as easy as it originally sounded. So the current plan, we're not getting rid of those, so they're staying in place. So they'll still serve some function, and we're still providing the 80% water quality unit there for that existing pond, which we're taking underground. So that existing detention pond right now will get converted into an underground detention pond with 50% units treating the flow before it enters the underground pond, and then an 80% unit treating the flow as it leaves the underground detention pond. The rest of the project is treated by a water quality swale, treatment swale, on the northern end of the parking lot. And then we're eliminating roughly 9 acres of existing impervious surface that's not being used today to offset the impacts. And the last comment from staff, enhanced landscaping plan, we're happy to work with staff on that, knowing that there's some airport and runway protection zone issues that we need to work around. But beyond that, we're happy to work with them to enhance that plan and come to a mutual agreement. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone here to speak in favor of granting this variance request? Anyone here to speak in opposition of this variance request? Seeing none. Turn it over. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hunt,
Yes, sir.
he referred to staff interest. Do you think what's being proposed and what's being proposed to work out later are acceptable?
Rebecca is the one who's been involved with these discussions. I mean, we certainly can work with the applicant to try to arrive at a mutually agreeable landscaping plan. I don't know that we can guarantee anything, but we can certainly work with them toward that end.
Are you okay with working within the limits of the flight path?
We've worked with the airport on numerous projects in the past and understand the FAA limitations on those liabilities, so, and are fairly familiar with the site, so that's not something new to us.
And if we can't come to an agreement on the number of trees, there always is the tree bank.
You have or have not?
If we cannot come to an agreement, if they aren't able to plant trees in this area, then there is potential for the tree mitigation bank as well, which they have paid to move forward.
You all agreeable with that? Going to the tree bank if you have to?
Yes, sir. And we also have some property that we're working on to maybe offset some tree plantings and whatnot in that.
If we can't come to an
If we
agreement
can't
on
come to
site.
an agreement, yes, sir.
I'm going to make a motion if it's okay with the board. I'm going to move that we accept as proposed with the condition that all the mitigation issues be resolved collaboratively with staff, particularly using the tree bank option and other off-site options. That's my motion.
Did I hear a second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's take a vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you.
I used to do your homework. You got a bathroom.
We've got a pretty big.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Big enough.
Yeah, they got that.
Yes, I'm just talking about the bathroom.
All right, looks like we're ready to move on to our third matter. Is the applicant here? And if so, could you come up and stand by the podium? Okay. And Mr. Kendall? Yes. Okay. Is your client here? Yes. Okay. Were both of you here when the opening statement was read at the very beginning? Yes. Okay, wonderful. Okay, then we'll go ahead and turn it over to staff for a brief explanation. Or just, oh, we had a bathroom break. Let's wait 1 second. Do we know that's where he actually went?
Yeah, Roy said that. I don't know where Anna went.
Anna had to leave.
Anna's gone.
She just came here for her big defeat in the very beginning.
Take out lunch.
Run out while he's out. I'm sorry.
You gonna do the same? All right. Everybody stay tuned.
We're losing people.
Hello.
This room is having a variety of effects on us.
Two more times?
Is this where you used to be?
Like this. Just cookies and stuff. Yeah, it was a little circle. We got together. Brief description of the variance request.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So the next case is case number 2018-00008. This is Tire Discounters, 741 Myatt Drive, APN 034-060-03500. Inspector is Boots O'Hara, and the council district is 10. Councilmember Doug Pardue. The applicant's request is the following: disturbance of the 75-foot floodway buffer to allow for redevelopment of the existing parcel, to allow continuous mowing and maintenance of a portion of the buffer area, placement of stream buffer signage in alternate location, placement of stormwater BMPs in the buffer, and to allow impervious areas within the buffer area. The appellant is Ronald H. Johnson. The representative is Don Kendall with Development Management Group, LLC. And for comments, stormwater staff had the comment additional mitigation is needed. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, site is zoned CS, defer to stormwater for review. And greenways defers to Stormwater Management Committee comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn the mic over to the applicant. If you could give us a brief presentation of your request.
Good morning, Don Kendall, Development Management Group, 4209 Gallatin Pike. I'm here today representing the property owner and the developer of the property. We've also got Mr. Sean Henry here from Toon Intricate and White, who will be part of our presenters. Wanted to point out a number of things about this site that are not evident in just looking at the aerial. This area is an isolated section of about 600 feet of stream. It's piped on the upside and the downside, and there are 5 properties that abut this stream. 4 out of the 5 properties have developed up to 5 foot off of the stream line. 1 property has utilized the buffer, the Popeyes, which is on the bottom of the screen. There was a retaining wall that was proposed and approved by Metro in 1998 when the Walgreens property was developed here. And that retaining wall took the base, went 4 foot above the base flood elevation at this abutting property. So we've removed the potential for flood here by having the wall in place for that amount of time. The existing building on this site, it was the former Safari's restaurant. It was Major Wallabies before that. All of this property has been developed since the early 80s, probably even before that. So this area along this stream is fully developed and has been for many years. The existing building was removed in 2009 because it was in a state of disrepair, and we've been looking for a proper proposed tenant to go there since. The parcel, as it exists today, has a pervious area of 17%, 7% of that which is located in the buffer zone. So the buffer zones are already have impervious area included in them. Our proposed plan for the Tire Discounters, it's an 8,250 square foot building. The property size is 1.09 acres. What our proposed plan will do is increase the pervious area on site overall to 35%, which is an 18% increase in the pervious area overall. It will increase the pervious area within the buffers to 9%, which it's currently 7%, so it's a 2% increase. It will, for the first time in its development history, provide water quality elements for the impervious areas that are contained on site before the water is released to the stream. There was an LID waiver that was approved by Metro Stormwater on January 29th due to shallow soil conditions and bedrock. And this project is also proposing a small non-disturbance area located from the stream to the retaining wall, and then a portion of the bank as you come up the hill that's noted in orange on the attached plan. So it's our belief that this project will provide a lot of benefit. It will improve the water quality on this site. and it should have no impacts to the flood. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Chairman, Sean Henry, 315 Dedrick Street, representing the development team here today. I spoke with Councilman Doug Pardue just a few days ago, and he's supportive of this request. So he's pleased to see this facility take hold in downtown Rivergate. As you can see from the aerial photographs, we're right there at the major intersection in Rivergate. This clearly is an intensely developed area. In taking a look at your considerations for variances, most of them do not apply because we don't have a flooding situation here, but some of them do, and I'll just touch on a couple of those. One is the importance of services provided by the proposed facility to the community. Councilman Pardue felt like, we have plenty of tire stores in the Rivergate area, but he supports competition. And he believes that particularly the look of this particular development that Tire Discounters provides is going to be an attractive addition to the Rivergate community. Another consideration is the compatibility of the proposed use with existing and anticipated development. Again, this property has been laying somewhat fallow for a number of years, and this will be the first time that any portion of this site is providing some buffer quality. A third consideration that's applicable here would be the relationship of the proposed use to the comprehensive plan. This is in the Nashville Next document. This is a T5 regional center. Again, expected to be highly intensified in the years to come. The only other area more intense than this area is downtown Nashville, which is a T6 type center. And then the specific criteria, there really are only two here, and that's for the modification of the buffer yard, and it's whether or not we end up with a reasonable buildable area as a result of the buffer modification, and then secondly, providing an equivalent stormwater quality enhancement and protection, which, as you just heard from Don Kendall, that's being done. So with those, Mr. Chairman, I would simply conclude that we've got 4 other members of the team here, and I'll spare you their commentary unless you want to hear from them, but they're in support of this project. Not aware that there's any opposition. If there is, I'd like the opportunity to answer any of those opposing points of view. And what's really important here is that for the first time, this site's going to absorb more stormwater than it ever has. And secondly, it's going to clean stormwater that it's never cleaned before. Thank you.
Thank you. Having concluded the presentation of the owner with reserved time, is there anyone here from the community to speak in favor of their variance request? If you could state your name and your address first.
Ronald H. Johnson. I live at 502 West Campbell Road in Goodlettsville. I'm probably the only one here that knows a lot about the property. I'm involved in the transaction to get Tire Discounters built. I did talk to Councilman Pardue. As Mr. Kendall said, he is in favor of that. And I believe it'll be an opportunity to provide a lot of good jobs in the area. I live very close to there. I can tell you there's never been any problems with flooding in that area, but based on what I've seen from the engineers' reports, I think it's going to be a positive thing for this strip of property. Thank you.
Anyone else here in favor of? Oh, we got a timer up there now. I just saw that. Nice. My watch, although it costs too much money, doesn't apparently do a good timer. But I'll have to complain to Apple about that. Anyone else here in favor of, or here to speak in favor of the variance request? Seeing none, anyone here to speak opposed to the variance request? All right, seeing none, then we'll open it up to the committee for questions to the applicant or discussion among ourselves. Yes, sir.
Did they present the mitigation needs that you all thought should be added in this recent presentation this morning? I'm talking to staff. Staff comments say additional mitigation is needed. Did you hear that expectation met in their presentation?
We've requested, we suggested, actually, that they provide additional mitigation for what was shown on the plans. The condition that they are providing equal or greater water quality for is a redevelopment project if a full buffer was then applied to it. They're just comparing it to the state it was in before and not the state it would be in if it was the full buffer. So they were saying their mitigation was that it's better than it is now, and we suggested that they provide some additional mitigation.
Were you specific on what additional mitigation you were looking for?
No, we don't tell people what
Sure,
they do.
sure.
We just, they were saying their mitigation was it's better than it is before.
Correct.
Basically, we're going to have a small undisturbed area. And
Right.
we explained that the standard by which we measure by is if a full buffer was applied to the parcel.
Right.
I would like to add that we've received that comment 2 days ago. We have been in discussions with staff, Mr. Kyle Birch in particular, discussing potential options for that additional mitigation. And we have proposed to, in the buffer 1 area, there's 2 isolated parking spaces that are adjacent to the greenway. We've proposed to remove those 2 spaces and add either a rain garden or additional landscaping within that area to supply that additional mitigation. My understanding is that if we do accept a rain garden, that it would also need to be part of the variance request, but we're open to and flexible to trying to improve that if needed.
So it's common for us, not certain, that a majority of us sometimes encourages staff and the applicant to work together collaboratively so that we don't play a prescriptive role in something we do part-time for a living. Some of us do it full-time, but that doesn't always make up a majority, right? So it can get really...
Only partially well, but full-time.
That's right. That's right. That too. That factors into it too. So it behooves us to try to allow staff and applicants to work together. It's just a more efficient process. So here's my question. Do you think you can meet the expectation of a stream buffer mitigation that would meet standards of a healthy stream buffer, not the pre-existing site condition?
That's a very subjective question, but
without details,
I believe we've already started those discussions, and from my standpoint, I believe we can come up with something that will represent additional mitigation to this property, and we've already started proposing that, and we're moving in that direction. I don't know the full status of how the staff feels about what we've proposed, so I'll leave that part of it to them, but we're certainly flexible, and our interest is to be able to develop this property, and we'll do what is necessary to try to make it palatable for the staff.
So what if I propose this? What if a motion said something along the lines of, and it would have to get a majority of the vote to be effective. What if I asked you all to meet the expectations of a healthy stream buffer condition as a condition of mitigation, and then you all work out the details? Would that be acceptable?
I think that would be a challenge to us because of the nature of the proposed development plan and what's going on that site currently. It's a pretty small parcel. We're proposing a building on this site that's a 0.17 FAR. We're allowed to go up to a 0.6, which would be 28,000 square feet. So we feel like we're proposing something that's not tremendous here. We have opportunities in the area of Buffer 1 to increase green space and to add landscaping and to add a rain garden. I would be reluctant to commit to a plan that could diminish the parking needs of the tenant and or the functionality of the proposed project.
So let me go back to staff then, and do you all see opportunities to mitigate outside of the buffer in existing parking places that would address things like additional pervious paving or additional tree islands or additional native landscaping outside of the buffer that could mitigate the expectations of granting this variance?
Are you guys using the minimum number of parking spaces you're required to?
We are not. I'll address that to the group. We are not holding the minimum required. It's 27 spaces, which is required for this site. The tenant has a need for something in the mid-30s to accommodate all of their customers. This is an auto service tenant. They have people that are coming on an hourly basis, so there's a lot of kind of turnover and back and forth. So they've determined in their business plan that they need roughly 30 to 35 spaces. We're currently proposing 36. We've offered to take that number down to 34. But if we go too much further than that, we may be putting our tenant in a bad business position.
And parking doesn't have to be sacrificed to get effective mitigation. I think that's part of the point I want to make sure I made. But my question is, Rebecca, do you see the ability to work within a 34 to 36 parking space?
As he mentioned, they received an LID waiver, so putting pavers and things out there, they've already determined the soils and the bedrock, there wouldn't be efficient use of that.
And that's why they got the
So
waiver.
it's definitely a constrained site. We can work with them. If you all would give us some guidance on maybe what level you want it brought to so that we can shoot for that.
You're asking us to do math out loud.
Sorry. I mean, one thing we were just discussing is that we could propose that they try to meet a site RV in the buffer area that is similar to what it would be in a forested condition, but I don't think they can get to that. So that would be trying to make an equivalent with math, which is difficult. There are limited sites for them to plant additional trees.
The fact that they got an LID waiver, that says a lot right there.
I don't know what this area is.
It's mostly green. It has a couple of sidewalks in it, but it is a green area. We could add landscaping there.
Todd, I would also add that there is a retaining wall involved, so obviously there's some concerns about water that might get in behind that. I don't know what the weep holes for that current wall is, if you're comfortable with that. So I just wanted to add that.
So there are other site constraints too.
There are. It was previously field site, so.
There you go.
Yay, doggies. Okay. Well,
If you could, your alternate site plan that you provide in your plans, SP01,
Yes.
what's wrong with that development?
Well, for tire discounters, it does not provide enough density to carry out their business plan, so it would eliminate this proposed use from the project. At 4,000 square feet, it limits the limits our ability to attract retailers to the site. It is one off of the main Gallatin Pike intersection, so it is, it's not an A site that I would say, so you're probably going to end up with a mom and pop type proposed use there if you were to apply that condition. And I think the valuation of the property as it is currently and the continued escalation of valuations on these properties makes it such that additional density is needed here to justify the development of it.
That's consistent with what they did next door at the fast food place, though, right?
Relatively, but the difference between the Popeye site and this site is they did not have the wall constraint, which kind of changed what the abilities were and if they would be effective.
So your point is that because it has the wall, you're able to build out further?
My point would be that the buffers won't be, if they're applied in this condition, won't be effective because the wall is creating a barrier between the development site and the stream.
How could that make them not effective?
Just because you're above a wall condition. So while you can clean the water, I think we're doing that in our proposed site by taking the pervious area up to 38% and applying water quality conditions here for the first time.
so it's better but not ideal.
Questions for the applicant?
I've got a question for Michael that may help all of us. So basically what you're saying about the wall is that the more pervious surface we put on the site, the more stress it might put on the wall if it's not adequately weeped.
I think that is a consideration. I would ask one question of Rebecca that might be helpful. The plan submitted today for the mitigation, is that different from what was presented at the pre-application meeting with staff?
I can touch base on that. So I think, early conversations were that they needed, it looked like, is there anything you could do to get additional mitigation? And so basically, they have not changed from the pre-app.
Okay.
And I think it looked to me like it meets the planning code in terms of what type of landscape islands you have to have and density of trees. And correct me if I'm wrong.
The one thing I could point out is that we did come back with the introduction of the no disturbance area between the stream and the wall and going up the slope. And replanting that entire area with native grasses. That would be a condition similar to the buffer one. That would be zone one that would be there. So that piece was added after our meeting.
So I guess over time, I know the committee has asked staff as we have these pre-application meetings to work with the applicants to get adequate mitigation. That is subjective. In some sites, it's easier to work out than with others. And I think this is a good case where, in looking at all the various site conditions, staff has looked at it and said there could be more. I think for you, maybe the consideration is the hardship of the existing site and what can work. Like has been mentioned here, a lot of times this is subjective, but I think the objective for you, for us as staff, is to make sure when people come that they have at least some mitigation in place, and then you can consider whether the hardship reconciles whatever staff might be wanting in light of what's presented, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to wrap this up, if someone could define what additional mitigation could look like that would not create instability in that retaining wall, I could make a motion.
Any other questions or discussions for the applicant?
Or somebody else can.
Seeing none, let's turn into our committee. And I'll start off. I don't see how I could vote in favor. I don't think it's the minimum necessary. In fact, I think the fact there's a plan in there that develops the property very adequately may not be near as profitable. I can understand how that, but I just don't see how we can. I don't see how I can approve the plan because they're not doing minimum necessary to develop this property. And I don't think you could put a worse use, maybe their entire store all the way up to a wall. Agreed. So that's where I am.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I agree. I don't know why the building has to encroach in the Zone 2 buffer. I mean, it seems like they could easily whittle off a portion of that building, so I don't understand that. And if there was some kind of delineation, even impervious pavements or whatever, at the point where those buffers begin, you would at least know that there's intended to be some kind of protection there. And so I know that the site's probably mostly impervious now. I know this makes it better, but this is a redevelopment of property, and given that opportunity, I think that they should do a better plan.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion?
Can I have a moment to confer?
Certainly.
So in lieu of having our application turned down, I think we would like the opportunity to defer this, go back and meet with staff again. We did get these comments late, so we're kind of on our heels in trying to address it and try to come up with something that maybe better mitigates the site and allows this project to go forward.
Okay, the applicant's asked for a deference. I can't remember, do we have to approve that, or is that just accepted? Okay, so move.
I'll move, but if I can, I would encourage the applicant to at least move the building out of the Zone 2 buffer.
I'd look at the minimum parking too, because I have a hard time putting parking in Zone 1 at all.
I'll second that as well.
So there's a motion, get a second on the motion to approve the deferment?
Second.
All right, got a second. Now we've got a motion on the table for deferral till 30 days or 60 days?
30 days.
30 days. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Goes faster. It's tight.
You have to leave? I got to leave for like 30 minutes. I'll miss.
All right. To the next one.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to leave early today. So.
Okay.
We're all buttoned up against that.
The next applicant is Metro Parks. And just to be on the safe side, let's go ahead and read the opening statement again, Penny.
Our opening statement to the applicant. If you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Committee, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied.
Thank you very much. Now we'll turn the floor to the applicant, the staff. I keep forgetting we do this now. The staff for a brief description.
Thank you. The following is Stormwater Management Variance Number 2018-00009, Gouldsville Park. It's located at 7744 Old Springfield Pike. The inspector is Boots O'Hara. It's Council District 10. The applicant's request is following. Number 1, use of excavation cut volume of 728 cubic yards below the 2-year elevation at 453.44 feet to be counted towards compensating storage capacity calculations. Number 2, Metro Parks would like to provide 500-foot spacing on signage. And number 3, continuous mowing and maintenance of a significant portion of the buffer. The appellant is Mark H. Bradfield. The representative is Stephen Carras with Collier Engineering. Comments: Stormwater staff has not provided a comment. Codes has not provided a comment. Planning, Metro Park project, City of Gouldsville Park project, defer to Stormwater for review. Greenways defers to Stormwater Management Committee comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll turn the floor over to the applicant for a brief presentation.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Metro Parks is, I have Mark Bradfield was Metro Parks. My name is Stephen Carras. I work with the Collier Engineering, engineer of record on this project. Metro Parks is proposing to develop a public park in the city of Goodlettsville. The park includes a small parking, 10,000 square feet, and a playground and a small pavilion there. We submitted a request for to use 728 cubic yards of cut below the 2-year for compensating storage to balance the cut and fill for the site, and also would like to request spacing on the signage of 500 linear feet and continuous mowing and maintenance of the significant portion of the buffer of the stream. We provided a mitigation plan for the tributary going to Mansker Creek to offset for the impact that this project will have on the floodplain of Mansker Creek.
Okay. Sure, yeah.
The site's currently being mowed for hay right now. There's a local who's been doing it for the city of Goodlettsville. This property was given to Metro with the condition that it be operated as a park perpetually. So our intent is to continue allowing that individual, if they will, to continue to catch the hay, and that would be to continue mowing. If that doesn't work out, then we will be bush hogging every 90 days, just like the hay rotation would be.
So we're not talking about short grass ball fields. We're talking about
keeping the woody growth
thick grass, yeah.
At best. The other thing to note about the property is that there is a, I don't know, I wouldn't call it natural, but there is a levee, a berm all the way around it that's been pushed up kind of over the years by the people doing the farming. There is a natural buffer. We've walked it with staff. The other thing I would point out with regard to that is that when we lay out the trail, we'll use the, I don't know, it's the old Greenways MOU, I guess, as far as the trail will be the delineation between, or the edge of the buffer. So we'll put the trail at the edge of the buffer, and the mowing will stop one mower width inside of that.
Is that the 500 foot of that?
The 500 foot on the signage.
Spacing? Oh, that's the space.
As you can see, the site is completely surrounded by buffer. I think it's about 3,000 feet, and I'm just trying to cut down on the amount of signs. I don't think a park should have, a sign every 100 feet. So the 500 foot was just a request. I would like to add to that, if we could put a single sign at the playground, some sort of LID interpretive signage that describes the buffer and what it's for and shows where it is, that we could, in lieu of the linear signage along the buffer, if we could just do one sign. Also, the mitigation that Stephen mentioned is, you can't hardly see it, but the bottom southeast, I guess, edge of the corner, edge of the property there, the yellow one that's highlighted, there's a little square across the street. That is a spring house. It runs in through a pipe under the road and then down a little tributary over to Masters Creek. That one we will be vegetating. That's what's shown in the plans. There it is. So that is the extent of our mitigation, because basically everything on the top side of that trail right there, next to actual Masters Creek, is pretty well vegetated. There's one spot that's not. The locals have been using it as a crossing, I think. So we'll address that and probably put some barricades in there, plantings most likely. But other than that, that's the extent of our request. I'm not an engineer, so I can't speak to the cut issue, but it's very, you can see it's very minimal. We had the original plan was to put the development right there in that piece of property that's highlighted yellow now, and when you guys decided to adopt it's 2016 flood zone amendments that pushed the only non-floodway portion now is where we have it located. So we've been working with staff for a while, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from the community to speak in favor of the variance request? Anyone here from the community to speak in opposition to the variance request? Seeing none. Let's yap among ourselves.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, as last month, when staff says no comment, it's interpreted as a oblique lack of objection.
Yeah, I mean,
You don't have any.
no comment is no comment.
That's not what I heard last month.
See, on the news, when you hear no comment, that's not what it means.
That's not what it means at all on the news.
So like in the former case, there was a comment of additional mitigation needed. In looking at this, staff had no comment.
A lot of times our no comments are, let's let the committee decide.
A lot of times.
The vast majority of our no comments are, that's what you guys get paid for.
We don't get paid.
Yeah.
And a lot of the issues too bring in the subjectivity of hardship. So that's another thing that we're trying to weigh as we work with applicants as well.
Yeah, I guess my only concern is that, this is donated property. Somebody might decide to restore the site and remove the levees one day. So would anything that we do in just kind of granting a variance, allow mowing of the buffer after someone goes out there and tries to restore the buffer. So I would be for a temporary condition to allow what's proposed, but to also allow reversion back to a natural buffer when the site conditions are ripe for riparian restoration and floodplain restoration. Is that fair?
That's fair enough, but the condition of the donation is that if it ever ceases to be a park, that it goes back to the city of Goodlettsville.
Lots of parks are covered in trees.
Well, yeah.
Okay, that's going to be my motion.
Well, Mr. Gabbard, I will tell you that we work extensively with parks on trying to identify locations for enhanced tree plantings, and it's an ongoing process with us to do that based on what their needs are, what the citizens' needs are, and what's available to do. So we are looking to do that routinely on parks properties.
And that's why I'm suggesting that. So if I make that a condition of the motion, that will not encumber your ongoing efforts to look for. Okay. All right. So I move that we grant the proposal as submitted with the condition that when site conditions allow the riparian buffer to be restored, that Metro Water staff and park staff work together to achieve that purpose without any binding effect of this variance.
Now, though, you made a comment about there was a request for the signs, and then you said what you'd really like is one and have it interpreted.
That's
sign
correct.
For education.
I'm just talking out loud, and you guys can tell me.
It would have to be
I would prefer, instead of putting signs every 500 feet, I would prefer to put a single sign at the playground that interprets, for the public to read, and that way they could see it and hopefully cover all. Because we have, like I said, you wind up putting 30 signs as it's currently written, and to me, that's detracting from the natural state of the flood buffer.
I withdraw my motion since it hasn't been seconded, Mr. Chairman. Is that acceptable? Resubmit a new motion.
Two, if we agree.
Well, I read somewhere it's not a good idea to accept friendly amendments, that you need to have solid amendments. So why don't I withdraw my motion and restate it?
That's probably more honored in the breach of the Metro Board and Commission, but
Thank you.
I'm sure that's more.
Okay, so I withdraw my motion. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit another motion.
Sure.
Okay, my new motion is the same as the previous motion with a condition that they be allowed to put one sign at the visitor area. And
As approved by staff.
As approved by staff, and that could be changed as the site evolves to a more restored condition over time. So that's my motion.
All right, we've got a motion. Can I hear a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's take a vote on the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you. All right. On to the next one. The applicant is Perry Engineering. Mr. Harper? Is your client here? Yes, sir. Okay, wonderful. Were you here, were both of you here when we read the opening statement again just this moment ago? Yes, sir. Wonderful, thank you.
But he left.
Let's go ahead and put the mic staff to hear a brief description of the variance request. Wonderful, all right.
All right. Next case on the agenda is case number 2018-00010, Twice Daily, number 7111, at 5272 Cane Ridge Road. Inspector is Sean Herman. APN number is 16300019300. Council District 32. Councilperson is Jacoby Adow.
Hold on one second.
Yes.
Pause you. Well, we need Roy here now, though. We have four. We've got four. So we're still good. Okay. That's what I want to make sure.
Okay. Applicant's request is to allow the following: floodway buffer disturbance of Collins Creek, mowing and maintenance of the buffer, and waiver of buffer signage. Appellant is William C. Kimbrough, Kimbrough Family Properties, GP, represented by Randy Perry, Perry Engineering, LLC. Comments: Stormwater staff had no comments. Codes had no comments provided. Planning site is zoned SCR. Defer to Stormwater for review. Greenways defers to Stormwater Management Committee comments.
Thank you. We'll turn the floor over to the applicant for a brief presentation of the request.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Stormwater Management Committee, my name is Randy Harper with Perry Engineering, 100 North Main Street, Suite F, Goodlettsville, Tennessee, representing TriStar and Mr. Kimbrough. The property is currently owned by Mr. Kimbrough and has been owned by Mr. Kimbrough and his family, or TriStar Energy, since the 1970s. The site's been operated as a convenience store since the early 1970s. The proposed, the existing stores currently sits in, or mostly in the Zone 1 and Zone 2 buffers. There's only about 2 feet of the front of the store that are not in the, at least in the Zone 2 buffer. The back portion of the store is actually in the Zone 1 buffer. The rear of this site is about 11 feet above the old Cane Ridge Road. Cane Ridge Road formerly ran behind the existing store. There's also adjacent to the property a cemetery. It's Cane Ridge, as you can see here, Cane Ridge has since been rerouted to the west of the site, and at the rear of the store, the old pavement from Cane Ridge Road has been removed. The proposed building expansion is in 2 parts, about 4 feet, 4.7 feet on the kind of the west side there. That's mostly in Zone 1 and Zone 2 buffers. It's additional, it allows for expansion of the restroom facilities inside the existing store. And as you can see, the little appendage there on the back is about 22 feet by 8 feet for cooler expansion. That area is within the Zone 1 buffer, and we've provided mitigation as far as just for that. I'm sorry, we go back to the appendage there on the side, the 4-foot expansion. That is over existing sidewalk, so there's no increased impervious area there. And we're providing mitigation, compensating cut and fill for the cooler addition on the rear, as well as some trees and landscape areas in the buffer on the west side. I'd be glad to answer any questions, any concerns that anybody has. Mr. Marcus Hardison's here with TriStar as well to answer any questions.
Thank you. Let's make sure that we don't have any comments from the community. Do we have anybody here from the community to speak in favor of the variance request? Seeing none, do we have anybody here from the community to speak in opposition to the variance request? Seeing none, we'll open up to the committee and probably have some questions for you. I'll go ahead and start off. So I want to make sure I understand. So the development, the only new development are the 2 red things I see on that screen, previous screen.
That's correct, sir.
Other than the mitigation that you're having?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And on the strip along the left side, that's currently a paved impervious area now?
Yes, sir. It's this existing sidewalk.
Okay. And then in the back, that's a new cooler, is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Is there any reason why you can't do that to the right of the building as opposed to going back in towards the creek? I mean, what's the purpose of the location? Could you explain that? Certainly, yeah, come on up. Yeah, whoever most, yeah, that'd be great, I appreciate it.
All right. Marcus Hardison, TriStar Energy. The reason why we can't go to the right is the way our store is situated, that area and what you have is only the footprint of the building, but inside the building, that area is cooler space. So it's cooler for drinks and things of that nature. What we're trying to do off the backside is more in our, I don't like to call it a kitchen area because we don't actually cook food, but it's more of our prep area. And so that's where that food would be stored. To put it, the storage area in the drink cooler is specifically for the drink cooler. And we have to store a lot of drinks on site as well as storing food. So going out the back is the only logical place to go.
Okay. And then if you could describe the mitigation that we're doing, because maybe that's what helps you get over the humps here.
Yeah, the mitigation that we've proposed, we've got some compensating cut fill there on the left side of the plan there where you see the 3 trees. Those 3 are oak trees, canopy trees that are in the Zone 1, partially Zone 1,
Those are
Zone 2
proposed
buffers.
trees?
Those are proposed trees,
Now,
yes,
that's
sir.
on someone else's property.
No, that is also the same owner. They own both properties. And then closer to the building in the Zone 1 buffer, the other tree is a understory tree. Or I'm sorry, was that a maple? Let me double check that to make sure. It is a canopy tree there. We do have some overhead power lines and some utilities that actually run behind the store, as well as kind of down the shared property line. So we're trying to avoid overhead utilities and keeping the canopy trees that we're adding inside the buffers in areas where they don't interfere with the existing overhead power lines.
So can you describe the water path of the stream? I mean, based on the contours, it looks like it's a pretty defined, possibly constructed flow path.
Yes, sir.
That's open to the air, that goes underground as it exits, and water is going underground as it enters? Is that fair? Am I looking at berms?
Essentially,
on either end?
It's not showing up there. What you have is a box culvert underneath the interstate.
Yeah.
Right here, it flows going this way.
Yeah.
This is the portion of Old Cane Ridge Road. Pavement ends here, and the pavement has been removed on this area. We've got existing retaining wall that kind of starts about here. It goes all the way around the site and ends basically this corner. This site here is elevated about 11 feet above this area back here.
So the area that you're encroaching into is an area that is between the retaining wall and the building?
Yes, sir.
Which also happens to be the buffer.
Zone 1 right here, this area is the sidewalk. That's partially in Zone 1 and Zone 2. The little cooler addition back here is actually going to be built out past the retaining wall. That portion of it will kind of overhangs the retaining wall and goes to grade. So it basically just extends the retaining wall down the ground in that little area.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We have one additional comment in talking to legal. Given the fact that the mitigation is on an adjacent property, although it is the same owner, we would ask, and maybe Mr. Mishu could address this, but we feel there would need to be some filing of documents relating to this variance to that parcel, so the requirement could go to that other parcel in the unlikely event it was sold. Is that possible, Steve?
I think what we could do is we could alter the existing application and include the separate parcel, being that the same owner, it will be the same signature. What we'll do is we'll alter the application to include the adjacent parcel.
Yeah, we're just looking to see something recorded with the Register of Deeds that will bind that parcel as well.
That will be part of the due diligence we'll do when we update the application.
Thank you.
So no comment this time is the same as no comment last time?
That is correct, and as in the last case, I think that speaks more to the significance of the hardship of the matter.
It is a unique site.
It's like every other site on this water.
But when you build a building right up against the buffer, that's kind of what happens.
All right, turning to discussion, I mean, I know it seems to me that although it would be, I understand, problematic internally for them to restructure how they have things set up, I think the cooler needs to be on the side of the property. So on this one of the sides in the Zone 1. So that's where I'm leaning now, if that helps anyone else in the discussion.
Say that again, you think it needs to be on the side?
I don't see I think the cooler needs to be put over or extend, make the the extension to the, what ours are left, greater. I mean, I understand that would be internally issues with the development, but.
And you're saying that would still be in the Zone 1?
It'd be in the, I mean, no.
Keep it on the back?
Or you could do it in Zone 2.
Keep it near the back wall is what you're thinking?
Or you could put it up front. It'd
just be further away.
I mean, I'm not sure why, especially hanging over the wall.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
wondering if there's some kind of no-rise issue there. Did they address any kind of no-rise?
They're gonna do compensating code fill.
Okay, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm with the chairman. It's unfortunate that it's inconvenient, but that kind of goes with the site.
That's my thought as well.
So do you all want to?
Yeah, motion to no.
You want to come back with a new proposal?
Could I propose a slight modification? I think on the cooler addition to the rear, we're currently talking about extending that down to grade. If we could do that with posts and just have it cantilever out and supported by posts.
It wouldn't alter my opinion if you're asking. I mean, I think if anything, I think to the extent y'all want to defer and then relocate that, or if you'd like to propose a relocation of that, we've even done that to a new location on that footprint. Then you might have some opportunity to get through today. But otherwise, it looks like it's going to be a denial.
Okay.
I confirm my client. Certainly, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we'd like to ask for a 30-day deferral.
Okay, there's been a request for a 30-day deferral based on, obviously, our issues with the intruding on that buffer. Motion to approve?
Or to defer?
A motion to approve the request. Yeah, I've got a motion. Run it. All right, Run it's got a motion. Got a second on that motion?
I'll second.
We've got a second. Motion on the table to defer for 30 days. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none. Moving on along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get a chance to redesign the interior, too.
Well, I understand it's a real pain in the ass. Part of the way they make that efficient is they do the exact same thing in every single store.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got the hospital. Had that hospital been next applicant. Is your client here?
I'm staff.
I'm sorry. I'm sitting there just staring. I'm not even looking anymore. I'm looking right past you. Not even... Holy moly.
Is Michael that challenging to work with? Every week, Steve.
That's how much I've zoned out.
Since you brought it up, we do have staff that you don't really see on a day-to-day basis or
That is true.
every Thursday basis. So we're trying to give more staff the opportunity to come before you, and that's why you are seeing fresh new
Wonderful.
faces.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
As long as they don't
That's a
look
good
like,
idea.
as long as they don't look like Michael like the last one did. So.
All right. So the applicant is here. And the applicant's client is here to these.
No, sir. I'm representing.
Okay, do we not need that?
They're on their way. But, no, sir, we can.
Okay, then we'll begin. Well, here's my issue with that is the opening statement. I need to make sure they understand that. I know you were here when we read the opening statement, but if they get here before, at any time during, let us know.
Absolutely.
And then we'll read the opening statement. I think that's the best thing we can do in the circumstance. Now, I apologize. Staff, would you please describe that?
The next case is 2018-00011, It's 234 and 236 Orlando Avenue, located at 236 Orlando Avenue. Parcel number 0911-402-0300 and parcel 0911-402-0400. The applicant's request is to encroach the floodway buffer zone 2 for disturbance of a driving area. To encroach floodway buffer zone 1 for disturbance with grading. And the appellant is B. Diaz with Woodland Street Partners, LLC. The representative for the appellant is Michael Garrigan from Dale and Associates. As far as comments go, Stormwater staff has no prepared comments. Codes has no comments. Planning states that the site is zoned OL and they defer to Stormwater for review. Greenways has the following comment. Greenways request a Greenways conservation easement to include the floodway plus 75 feet.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I feel like I need to do some house cleaning here real quick. The statement was made that it was a floodway buffer that is proposed for disturbance. It is not. It is a Zone 2 stream buffer. It is not the floodway buffer. I wanted to make that very, very clear.
Can we clarify that up there, somebody, too, but go ahead.
It's not off a flood. It's based off a tributary. It's not based off the floodway. Because that kind of goes to the whole story I'm about to try to paint the picture for you with. I started working on this site a couple of years ago. Lenox Avenue was a public road that came down the side. That's where our drive is now on the plans that you're seeing. And it goes all the way and it crosses Richland Creek and it stubs to a property across the creek. And that was the only access for that property across the creek, but it was an unimproved right-of-way. So when we started looking at it, we talked to Public Works. They said, well, if you're going to use Lenox Avenue as your access, then you've got to build Lenox Avenue to public road standards, sidewalks, curb gutters, to serve two properties, and then build a bridge across Richland Creek just to get to one property on the other side made absolutely no sense to us. So the first step that we did was to abandon that right-of-way. And in abandoning that right-of-way, we had to work with a neighbor on the other side. You can see where it says Lenox Avenue and the red line is going down the center. That property around the other side, we helped him get an easement through another property, so I believe it's 35th. Either way, so that he's now no longer landlocked, and we don't have to put a bridge over Richland Creek. I don't think anybody wants it. I don't think anybody would want Lenox built all the way through as it's shown, whereas right now we're building about 50% of it, or proposing to build 50% of it. So we've worked through council, the mandatory referral process. That right-of-way has been abandoned. It's now a private drive. And that serves a couple of purposes. We met with the council lady a couple of times. We met with the neighborhood group, and we've met with, please correct me if I mistake, but Richland Watershed Association? Is that? Alliance. Okay, thank you. I knew there was an A there. And the only comment through all three of those, which is three different parties, but there was like 6 different meetings, was that the drive that we're showing on the plans that are in front of you was shown as standard asphalt. They wanted that to be pavers. We have conceded to that. And I guess in conjunction with that, they didn't want the dumpsters shown as they're shown on our plan, or located where they're shown on our plans. We have agreed to relocate those so that they're outside of the buffer. So we've been working with we've been working with this thing since day one, trying to be as sensitive as we possibly can. The site is inundated with almost 50% buffers. It's inundated with the sewer easement that runs right behind our proposed building. My clients who are not here, there's an extenuating circumstance, but they are developers and builders in Nashville, and they do a lot of work, and this is going to be their new office building. So it's very important to them that they're very excited about this opportunity. And, just when just going through all the rigmarole that we've been through on this, the topography it drops about 20 feet from the front to the edge of the existing Richland Creek Zone 2 buffer. That's why our building has a tuck under garage. We felt like that was an opportunity to minimize earthwork. It was an opportunity to minimize the footprint. And again, trying to be as environmentally friendly as we possibly can with all the, not just the buffers, the floodplain, the buffer from the stream next door, which this is a great picture because you can see, technically speaking, the Zone 2 buffer does not touch our property. What it touches is the Lenox Avenue right-of-way that we have a shared drive on. So technically speaking, the Zone 2 disturbance that we're requesting, which will be pervious pavers, that's something that if we do move forward with a motion today, I would like to offer a friendly amendment that all exterior impervious surface or exterior driving surfaces be constructed of pervious material, as well as the dumpster locations be relocated outside of any buffers. But we're trying to be as cognizant as we can about everything. We've got a mitigation plan that's in front of you. It's going to show Zone 2 there. That's the plan of record. If you go to Zone 2, I believe it's got 10 canopy trees, and we're only dealing with, a couple hundred feet of buffer frontage there. But there's 10 canopy trees, and then there's over 100 shrubs and native plantings, native grasses, northwind switchgrass, things like that. So we want to, stay out of the Zone 2. I want to make that very clear. None of this development will touch the Zone 2 or Zone 1 buffer of Richland Creek. The only disturbance is the Zone 2 buffer of the tributary that never touches our property. It runs down the neighboring property and enters Richland Creek before it ever even enters our site. So that is the root of the request. But as far as the mitigation, we've really made a very strong attempt to overkill it because, like I said, Ms. Jen Yadon just walked in. She's with Woodland Street and Paragon Group. They're the builders, contractors, developers that will be habitating this building, and they want this to be something special and not just something. We're not trying to cut any corners, I guess, is my point. But the fact that tributaries Zone 2 buffer comes into existing metro right-of-way, which has been abandoned and is now the shared drive, there's just no way we can get around it. It's absolutely impossible, but we've tried to make up for it the best that we can through mitigation. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Now that the owner's representative has walked in, Penny, if you could read the opening statement real quick for us, just to cover that base.
Our opening statement to the applicant. If you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Committee, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public to speak in favor of the variance request? Is there anyone here from the community to speak in opposition to the variance request? Seeing none, I will turn the discussion and the questions over to the panel. I have a quick question to orient myself. Could you show me where the tributary, well, I'm not even sure where that's best drawn to do it on. Okay, that's what okay, so that's where the two tie in. That's where it's tying into Richland. And are the two properties, and I'm going to call them north and south because of the way they're oriented on this map, are those two properties owned by the same owner?
No, sir. It's actually separate owners, and they're separated by the Lenox Avenue right-of-way.
Which is now being condemned, or not condemned, but
it's being abandoned.
Correct.
And the land will split between the two.
The red line will be the new property line.
That's correct, yes, sir.
And who owns this property to the south?
I cannot recall. We've actually done some work. We surveyed his property for him, which, to be honest with you, that's what brought up this off-site blue line. We were working on our property for our client, the client we're here talking about today, and never thought to look and see if there's a stream on the other property that if you offset it 50 feet may encroach a little bit. But surveying that, to be honest with you, I can't recall his name off the top of my head.
Sierra Properties.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay.
And I've looked at his property for him. He's pretty encumbered.
He's in a pickle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your development doesn't at all request any variance of the buffers for Richland. It's just buffers for this tributary.
Yes, sir.
And when you say that you suggest that slight modifications or conditions on the approval would include pavers, that's pavers within the buffers, both buffers for the tributary? Is that what you mean?
To be honest with you, to simplify, and I hope my client's okay with this, but to simplify it, I would say that all exterior driving /parking surfaces shall be constructed with a pervious material.
Okay, and then how are you going to get rid of that dumpster?
I
assume that's what that is in the bottom right corner?
Well, if I can show you, the dumpster will move from here to there.
Okay, so that's an acceptable spot. And that eliminates the need for that concrete pad in that corner, right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
So that's even making it, that's going to remove.
Yes, sir. And it would be
20 by 20?
so that
What size is that? 12 by?
It's 20 by 20.
20 by 20 portion of pervious, of impervious space will actually come off.
And we can pick up, it actually.
And that corner.
It works both ways. It's a common benefit. We can pick up one more parking space that would be of pervious pavers as opposed to the concrete dumpster pad, by offsetting what we would lose up there. And that dumpster pad would then be located right next to a 4-bay, so that if there's any kind of, leaching or anything of that nature that washes out from the dumpster pad, it's going to go to a 4-bay before it goes into any B&B.
Can we see an aerial of this tributary without the buffer line? See what the lay of the land looks like.
It's kind of scrub, and if you want to pan, Rebecca, a little bit to the southwest, you'll see that there's a house right across the street that is almost sitting on the bank of this tributary. Right there. See?
So I'm trying to get in my head where the lines are of your disturbance. So can you overlay the disturbance with the zone 1 and zone 2 of the tributary, just so we can kind of see that?
I would say it would be like the O and the X of Linux.
It would stop at the O and the X?
Yes, sir.
So the purple line is the tributary, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. And it would stop at the O and the X.
Well, maybe between the O, the X, and the Ave part, because none of the, it's hard. I wish this worked on this screen, but the disturbance is on the southern side of that red line.
Okay. So
it never goes to the northern side of that red line, so. Okay, here we go, thank you. So it's pretty much right in this location.
And so the only reason you want to get into zone 1 is just to have access to it temporarily?
The zone 1 buffer disturbance is just for a couple of little contour tie slopes.
Yeah, for grading.
Yes, sir.
As it says.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because earlier when you were kind of editing, it threw me off. Is what's on here now still relevant? But what's relevant is we're talking about a tributary, not Richland.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so everything else is the same. Okay. So it's a temporary grading access to the zone 1 that will be revegetated, and the zone 2 will be, the impervious aspects of zone 2 will be impervious pavers.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
All right, I get it. And staff didn't comment again. Okay. Is this this make you feel, Mr. Harris?
11 o'clock, that's what I'm feeling.
How does your watch make you feel? Yeah, it makes me feel the same way.
I mean, it seems to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, was this considered, taking that drive and moving it north, putting the parking to the south, caused you to lose too many spaces in that eastern parking lot? Is that why that doesn't work?
Yes, sir. We could not get access to, I mean, it's really not losing the spaces, we just simply couldn't get access. It's unavoidable. And if you see how, for instance, this is the entrance into our drive.
Yeah.
If we can't do that, we can't get back there.
Without losing too many spots. I mean, you could push it all
Without
up.
losing every single one of them.
Yeah.
So,
Because the building is located between the front setback and a sewer easement in the back, so there's no moving the building. So, I mean, I was being sincere earlier when I said we've really vetted this and been through the ringer to try to figure this out the best way that we can.
Any other questions for the applicant?
so there's no retaining wall on the Zone 2 side,
There is a retaining wall outside of the Zone 2.
outside?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, on the back side, but not on this lower side?
That's correct. No,
Not-
yeah,
not on the
on the
south.
backs. And we thought that would be kind of a good idea too, because we'll have the bioretention up at the top of the retaining wall, and we'll be able to put the buffer signs along the wall. And then all the vegetation, the 100+ shrubs and the 10 trees happen down on the lower side. So it's almost like not only a signed, but a permanent line of demarcation. And hopefully it has, with it being a contractor, developer's office building, maybe it provides some education to some of my other clients that I continuously have to explain how important this stuff is to. Because they like to ignore it.
And your variance request now includes pervious paving for the entire parking lot?
That is correct.
Not just the Zone 2?
The entire parking lot, yes, sir.
Is that above and beyond?
It is above and beyond. They have the bioretention is supposed to be their full site treatment.
I'll make a motion to approve as shown with the conditions. 1, pervious pavement throughout the parking and drives, and 2, the dumpster gets moved to the north end of the parking area.
I'll second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes with those 2 conditions.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience today.
Thanks for coming up with ideas.
All right. Man, that was quick.
That item of business.
We've got an item of business today. It's the request of a rehearing for case at 2207 Pennington based on the information from the fire marshal's office. Interesting.
I think Logan had some information.
So staff going to describe what the new business request is? Is that what we're doing?
I thought the applicant would, but I don't know.
That's the way we want to do it. We can do that. If the applicant would like to describe what the item of new business is. I'm surprised that this request isn't, is a request for a rehearing separate from a request that would typically come from us in our normal agenda?
So yes, so there's specific rules in your, hang on, let me flip to the right. Hang on. Okay, no rehearings of the decision of the committee shall be had except on motion to reconsider by that vote by a member of the majority of the committee on the preceding vote or on a written request by the appellant for a rehearing. So basically, the request and the rehearing happen separately. So all you have today is the request for the rehearing. You can decide on that one way or the other, and then the rehearing would be set in future.
Okay. All right, seeing as this is a typical or atypical item of business, we don't need staff to describe it. We'll turn the floor over to the applicant. Mr. Epstein, I know you were here earlier, so you've heard the opening statement on any decision we make. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
This one is more of a, we ruled on this a few months ago to build decks on the back of the houses that I built. And then somehow in the middle of that, it said, well, no stairs. So then I went back to staff after that and said, well, and gave them a design before we built them and said, well, if the stairs don't terminate in the floodway buffer, do you have a problem with that? And they said, no, we don't have a problem with that. We also went to one of the commissioners who authored the amendment, and he said, yeah, that's what I meant. I meant the stairs wouldn't terminate in the floodway buffer. So we built those based on the information that we had, and then got it finalized and got a certificate of occupancy, and the people who bought the house moved in. And then after that time, they came back and said, no, it didn't really say that. We need to do a rehearing on that. So that's why we're here again.
Who's they?
Who's that? Staff came back and fined me after they finalized it. They came back a month later and said, oh, we got a complaint from a neighbor that you're not supposed to have stairs. I said, well, we talked to staff about this, and that was the understanding that if they didn't terminate, that was okay, but we went back and looked at the tape, and it really didn't say that, so you need to go back to committee. So that's the reason I'm here. In the meantime, also the fire marshal has ruled, you've got a letter in the file on that, that because of the maximum occupancy load and the travel distance to the one exit I have, they've ruled that it needs a second exit. And that's sort of what the letter is on that. So I'm kind of caught between now you guys and the fire marshal's office. So I was hoping for a little bit of leniency because I was kind of, I was told that it was okay. We put together a design. We didn't build this in a vacuum. We didn't do it just willy-nilly, oh gosh, we're just going to build stairs, to the hell with you guys. No. We asked the staff asked the commissioner said, well, that's what I was expecting, that you would build it outside, and that's what the drawing's about. So that's the reason for the rehearing. All we want to do is change the wording at the end that says, instead of no stairs, it says no stairs will terminate in the floodway buffer. Is working for a little bit of extra language in the ruling that you made to say that, and that solves the problem because the stairs they don't terminate in the floodway buffer. And there was a drawing that goes with this somewhere, but.
If I could give you a couple little more pieces of guidance on the procedural issues involving rehearings. It says, if the motion or written request to reconsider receives 3 affirmative votes, the committee shall hold the rehearing. So there's only 4 of you here. 3 of you would have to vote in favor of this for that to proceed. And then the other thing is, no request other than by a committee member, and this is a request from the applicant, to grant a rehearing will be entertained unless new evidence is submitted which could not reasonably be presented at the previous hearing. So you kind of need to make a finding that there's new evidence also.
All right, let me make sure I understand. So, as part of the approval on your variance request, you had the decks on the back, and we said they're fine as long as you don't have any stairs from them. And so, and so the letter says no stair.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to make sure I lay out so I understand.
Yeah.
And then, so you built it, and then someone said, why can't we have a stair? And it caused you to have discussions with staff. And staff said, yeah, we just don't want the stair. What they think they mean, so you just don't have a stair going down into the buffer. And then staff spoke with, when you say commissioner, you're talking about someone.
Commissioner Dale, yeah.
Okay. And asked Dale, and Dale said, yeah, that's what my understanding of that would mean. And so y'all's interpretation of the letter was that they could have a stair as long as it didn't go down to the buffer. And then, so you build it, and then some neighbors complain, and staff has to go out there, and they fine you. You actually got fined. Did you pay a fine?
Yeah, I paid a fine, yeah.
Okay. And then now you've got to ask for a rehearing because they're going to continue fining you unless you remove those stairs?
Yes, that, and also the fire marshal now has ruled, hey, look, because of the size of the house and because of of the travel distance.
You have to have another exit.
I need another exit anyway, so I'm kind of like stuck between the two of you guys now.
Okay. And so you need this rehearing so that we can say, yeah, you don't need to continue being fined.
Yeah. And basically say, or revise the wording to say stairs will not terminate in the floodway buffer, which is what we did.
And the fine does not cause you to tear out the stairs that you put in, they're still there, right?
Well, he's going to continue getting fined unless he tears them out.
Yeah.
Exactly, but they're still there, so
Yeah.
we kind of fixed the technicality that would allow the stairs to stay.
Yeah,
Or the fire marshal's going to make you create a second exit.
yeah, and I don't know how we're going to do that without hitting the flood, because the only others, because we're 15 feet off the ground.
Yeah, I understand now. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. This is an interpretation of an existing letter, not necessarily a rehearing.
Sure.
I mean, if the letter and the, I mean, it's a question of whether there is any ambiguity to interpret. I mean, if it just said no stairs, period, and honestly, I haven't looked, I don't.
Maybe it said no stairs.
Yeah, then, I mean, I don't think there's any ambiguity there. So, I mean, it may be a short rehearing, but like staff or, the only way you can do it is to change the variance, basically.
And that's really what we're looking for, is just a change in the wording and the variance of one of the conditions.
That
And
would be what you'd be asking for if they agree.
to have a rehearing.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
so
and you need
this
three
step
of you
is
to
just,
vote in
can we
favor
have a
of the
rehearing,
rehearing.
please?
Yeah.
Technically, the ask right now is not, can I have stairs?
The ask is just, can I have a rehearing?
Can I have a rehearing? Ask if you can have stairs.
To ask if we can have stairs.
The reason
Exactly.
we're struggling with this because he has to come back and we have to address it. And
It seems like we could do it in one step, but
it seems like we could, but we can't.
The rules
Yeah.
are pretty clear. You could amend your rules at a future date, if you don't like that rule, but that is what your rules say now.
But one alternative is for you to trust us and not have to come back. And I don't know if it's appropriate in the context of granting a rehearing to say that the majority of the committee is inclined with allowing changes in the.
I mean, I think the rule is pretty clear that the rehearing will be scheduled subsequently.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out a way to make it easier on him and us.
I know, I don't really want to waste any more
I
time.
do hear you, but there are several absent members, and while they might agree with you, we can't really speak for them, so.
That's why I said it hypothetically and wishfully.
I know, I'm sorry it's cumbersome, but.
All right, so I'm going to move that we grant a rehearing purely for the purpose of revisiting the language concerning the stairs.
Yeah, in the public notice aspect, yeah.
Can you, that's what can you do that? A rehearing is a rehearing of the entire variance request.
I mean, that is to your, just whether you can limit it to just that piece of it. I mean, I don't think he's asking.
No, I'm not asking for a rehearing of the whole thing. I'm just asking for that one sentence.
And that's why I hesitate to
If you
grant
just move to grant the
Yeah, okay.
request, then I think that you're good.
We have a motion and a second.
And this is to rehear the variance request or to rehear just a particular portion?
To rehear the variance request as it relates to the issue of the stairs.
And I just want to make sure that that's actually something we can do.
I mean, it just says a rehearing, so I don't really see a problem with that, given that that's all he's asking for. I think if you just move to grant the request, you're good.
Do you understand my concern?
I'm sorry. Say that one
Do you
more time.
understand
sir.
my concern?
Yes, I do. And I'm sorry it got to this point. I wish it never would have
Oh,
gotten
I'm not
there.
blaming you. I just want to make sure you understand
It
what I'm
says
saying.
a rehearing of a decision by the committee. So I think what Mr. Galbraith is saying that he's proposing to move for a rehearing of the portion of the prior decision of the committee as related to the stairs.
And I realize you, Mr. Slade, have concerns that are probably not explicitly stated. And the reason I'm restricting my motion to the stairs is I have similar concerns that since you've only asked for a rehearing of the stairs, that we limit our discussion to the issue.
Yeah, I don't want to waste any more of your time. I don't want to debate anything else. I know time is precious.
It's a different perspective.
All right, there's been a motion to grant a rehearing of the variance limited to the stair aspect, stair restraints on that variance approval. So I have a second for that motion. Got a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, seeing none. All right, so the rehearing with respect to that
Thank you.
particular issue has been granted.
So that'll come up at the next meeting, I think, or something?
Yes.
I gather.
I believe so.
Yeah. It'll come up last
Sorry we
again.
put you in that spot.
Yeah, I shouldn't have anything else on the agenda, so you won't have to see me twice.
Thank you. Unless you make stairs a more complicated
Yes.
issue than it seems, yeah.
All right, thanks. Do we have any other business?
Mr. Chairman, two quick things. We've been working on the Fontanelle matter, and we anticipate having an update for the committee next month. And then additionally, unless the agenda has expanded to a point it won't allow it, we anticipate next month having some business portion discussion with you on the comment issue and trying to discuss that a little bit further. Legal may have some other things they're wanting to discuss procedurally, but we're understanding where you're coming from as far as the circumstances surrounding staff making comments, and we want to try to better understand what you are needing and then better understand some of the things maybe staff is hoping to avoid. So we're looking to do that at a future meeting.
Yeah, and I have maybe a couple of things, that, just procedural aspects that, I think it'd be good to do a refresher on. So if any of you all have any questions or issues that you'd like to have addressed along those lines. I'm sorry.
Consent calendar was one
The consent
area
calendar.
topic.
That sounds good. All right. We have a lot of stuff on the agenda, do we think, Penny?
No.
Wow, that's wonderful. All right.
I have one comment,
Well, we
too.
just
Yes, sir.
did two
We've altered the time.
30 days.
Ms. Penny has, instead of breaking up cases into certain times, we've just assigned everybody the first case, so that way they'll come, and we won't have any mishaps like the last time where
Yeah, that's
things
good.
go way too fast or way too slow, people are here or not here, so we just tell everybody to come right when it starts.
I think that makes sense.
I got one quick comment. This is just an FYI for the full committee. I mentioned to Rebecca Doan earlier that I would like to have the Metro Water's new tree person come talk to us at an appropriate time when she has her legs under and has, I think there's about a couple months' work of orientation and situational preparedness that needs to occur, and I'd like to have her come and help us understand how we can work more collaboratively for this new focus on trees in terms of a paid position dedicated to trees. And I don't know if everybody had a chance to be as geeky as I was last week and watch the mayor's budget hearing with Mr. Potter. And Mr. Potter and the mayor both initiated a two-priority focus, one of which was about trees, about planting more trees in Metro Davis County, specifically for the purpose of improving the water situation, both flooding and quality. So I think she can help us maybe work through some recipes for solutions that will reduce debate and expensive time, valuable time.
All right, sounds good. Any other comments? New business? How about a motion to adjourn? Anyone?
Make a motion.
Got a motion to adjourn? Can I hear a second? All right, motion on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. No opposed. Thank you.
I move we pawn Mr. Smith.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.